working around the clock to locate the missing. Disaster management teams are working across the clock to respond to several incidents that have occurred across the broader Umgungundlovu district as a result of the inclement weather conditions.
Residents have been warned to stay vigilant as the weather warning remains in place. Nhlanhla Mabaso, Eyewitness News.
Social development officials in George have received a tongue lashing from members of parliament for the way they handled the deadly building collapse. The Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure travelled to the southern Cape Town to conduct hearings with families of victims. Many who turned up say social development departments failed to give them the support they needed. It's been 18 months since 34 construction workers died on duty while the structure they were working on collapsed and caved in on them. Zulfa Khan reports.
Many who opted to speak told MPs there's been a lack of assistance from government departments after the tragedy in May 2024, especially from the Social Development Department. Sibusiso Nkobese, like many others, spoke on behalf of the bereaved families.
The day that building collapsed there, yes, social development was there, helping people. But after, social development was not there. They were there with only phone call to hear how people coping.
MPs pressed social development officials.
With only phone call to hear how people coping.
MPs pressed social development officials for answers, but the committee was not impressed. Eventually, EFF MP Moleboheng Letlape resorted to apologizing to the families and victims gathered.
I want, on behalf of the chair, to apologize for the treatment that you got from social development. You did not deserve it.
DSD officials told the committee they have done all that they're mandated to do. Zulfa Khan, Eyewitness News.
The inquiry into Johannesburg prosecution's boss Andrew Chauke resumes this morning with NPA head Shamila Batoy back on the witness stand. The commission kicked off last week with Batoy as its first witness. She is the main complainant in the case against Chauke, accusing him of making politically motivated prosecutorial decisions. Khomotso Modise has more.
The main cases that Andrew Chauke is being probed for is the 2012 racketeering charges against former KZN Hawks boss Johan Boyson, charges that were later withdrawn, and the decision not to charge former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli for the 1999 murder of a man he shared a lover with. Last week, the inquiry had only dealt with Boyson's matter, in which NPA head Shamila Batoy testified that Chauke had no business leading the prosecution's team, which was investigating the matter because he's the Johannesburg prosecution's boss. The commission also experienced several administrative hiccups last week, with the panel led by retired Justice Besan Gabinde pointing out the poor pagination of documents, among other challenges. Evidence leader Advocate David Mhlamonyane assured the commission that he would be ready this morning. Khomotso Modise, Eyewitness News.
And while French President Emmanuel Macron has questioned the value and longevity of the Group of 20, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he hopes the review of the collective conducted under South Africa's presidency will serve as a helpful guide to ensure the G20 remains fit for purpose in an ever-changing world. Closing the two-day Leaders Summit in Johannesburg yesterday, Ramaphosa said the review should continue into next year. South Africa has used its presidency to place the priorities of Africa and the global South at the heart of the G20 agenda. Lindsay Dentlinker reports.
Following on from the presidencies of Indonesia, India and Brazil, the 2025 G20 prioritized the issues that matter most to the developing economies. While incoming G20 President Donald Trump has indicated that under his leadership, the bloc will return to its core mandate of attending to economic issues, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the declaration reached at the start of the summit commits to improving the lives of people across the world.
We have laid the foundation of solidarity. Now we must build the walls of justice and the roof of prosperity.
The summit has mobilized financing for a just energy transition, commitments to respond to the effects of disaster and climate change, and ensuring that critical minerals drive prosperity. Ramaphosa said G20 leaders had the responsibility to accelerate progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and the Pact for the Future. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Nasrec.
Gold is trading at $4,105.70 an ounce. The rand is at 17.35 to the dollar, 22.74 to the pound, 20.01 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $62.58 a barrel.
And in the traffic leaving Rand Park Ridge, we still have got that accident on the N1 North that happened right after Beyers Nodia Drive. It's causing heavy delays. There's also queuing traffic on the N3 North between the Geldenhuys interchange and the Glulies interchange.
A cloudy day in store for Gauteng, along with showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 24 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour: the South African Weather Service is warning of more heavy downpours in KwaZulu-Natal, where 3 people were washed away by floods.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7 and 106 FM.
Minutes after 9 o'clock. Dumelang. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Clement Manyathela Show on this 24th day of November. Great to be in your company. Thanks for joining us here on 702. I hope you had a wonderful weekend in the midst of that important gathering South Africa was hosting. What a successful G20 gathering. I've been saying the whole weekend as we were broadcasting live from the summit in Nasrec that our government has outdone itself. The event was well organized, it was well run, it was well strategized, even politically. We really put up a world-class show. President Cyril Ramaphosa also rose to the occasion. I think he met the moment. In the lead up to this gathering, the president was diplomatic when that was required. He was firm when the moment required that. What do you think? It was a historic summit for different reasons. This is the first summit ever that an African country hosts the G20 summit. This is the first time ever. South Africa was on the global stage. All eyes were on us. And it's not always that you have a country like ours host such important discussions that will guide and shape the global agenda. It's not always that we host a gathering of the world's most powerful and industrialized economies, the world's most influential leaders, and South Africa is right at the center. But more importantly, though, for me, South Africa was able to secure the adoption of the declaration on the first day of the summit, which was quite strategic. The other success is how this summit has firmly placed the interests of the continent at the heart of conversations. I mean, when you look at the declarations, there are so many African issues that have found expression in the declarations that were adopted. There was, in fact, such a cool video you should see that the presidency posted right after the summit. You can see world leaders going to shake President Cyril Ramaphosa's hand. They're congratulating him. It was so cool. Like, they were telling him how proud they are of him, thanking him for his leadership, thanking him for his hospitality. So make no mistake, this marked a significant milestone for South Africa's leadership on the international stage. And I think multilateralism has won the day. As Lula da Silva said, it was a diplomatic victory. What do you think? Let me know how you think South Africa did. Let me know how you think the president fared. You can give us a call on 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. Are you proud of President Cyril Ramaphosa? Yesterday, we were getting voice notes from people who were saying that. And I joked that it's not always that you get voice notes of people often call in or send out voice notes and say, we are so proud of the president. So how do you think he's fared? How do you think South Africa has handled things this weekend? Or maybe you've got some inputs about stuff that piqued your interest over the weekend, maybe from the declarations or from things that transpired at the summit. 011-883-0702 is the number to dial. WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. At 10 o'clock, we're going to have a conversation with Zane Dangor, who is the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. He served as the G20 Sherpa. This is the man that was leading negotiations and making sure that the G20 countries are aligned on the issues that would be adopted through a leaders' declaration at the summit. So he'll take us through the behind the scenes, but also how they were able to get the different countries to agree to a joint declaration a day before that was supposed to be done. At 10:30, we're going to continue our series with the series that we started a couple of weeks ago, looking at South African wars. It's more like a history lesson, if you will. We started by learning more about the First Boer War. We discussed the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879 and then discussed the Second Anglo-Boer War. We looked at the Khoisan Dutch Wars. And today we're discussing the Sekhukhune Wars. What do you know about the Sekhukhune Wars? There were a series of conflicts fought between the Bapedi nation under King Sekhukhune I and the encroaching forces of the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek. Right? This is like the Tsar or Transvaal Republic, if you will, and the British Empire in the late 1870s. And these were wars that were so crucial. They were a crucial part of the Bapedi's resistance to European colonialism. So Kgoshi Sekhukhune played a key role. He had a long and bitter struggle against the Boers between 1876 and 1878. And there's a lot that has distinguished him, in fact, as one of the brave leaders of the same class as King Shaka, King Moshoeshoe, and many others. So we're going to find out more about his role, but broadly have a discussion about the Sekhukhune Wars at 10:30. If you've got some questions, some inputs, I'm happy for you to join that conversation. And then at 11 o'clock, we're going to do our Family Matters feature. And today we're discussing how to deal with the lack of emotional availability and vulnerability in families. How vulnerable are you in your family? Does your family struggle with having emotional conversations? Do you think your feelings have safe space in your home? I want you to join that conversation for us at 11 o'clock. That's the show coming up over the next 3 hours.
Clement Manyathela, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7
and 106 FM.
Good morning, Clement. Great to hear from you, and great work done at the summit, of course, also with the interviews that you took on. Indeed, I also stand very proud of the president and what the country has been able to achieve in hosting the G20 summit. I think one of the things that you've mentioned as well is to see multilateralism agreement, right, amongst the G20 members. That for us also gave us comfort, because I think with all this bilateral engagements that we have seen post the tariff wars, I think there was a bit of a shake-up and people were wondering, will the globe be able to work together again without being too protectionist? So I think for this, it was definitely one that was commendable. Great success by South Africa. Definitely celebrated.
Hi, good morning, Clement and the team. Sam here from Joburg. Yeah, I would like to congratulate our president for what he did during the G20 summit. I'm so proud of him. My little worry is us, citizens of South Africa, what is going to happen here after the G20? Are we going back to normal? Our lives, are they going back to normal as it is? How are we going to survive the struggle of the poverty and unemployment? Thanks, Sam from Joburg.
Yeah, Sam, that's like saying, you know, if Begunom Teyimbi, there was a ceremony at home and you cooked or you slaughtered a cow and the elders of the family had come and there were important discussions or celebrations, and then they leave and we ask, okay, what does this mean? I mean, we can't have the ceremony every day. We kind of definitely that spirit the whole time. That's something that happens once in a while. Now, the conversation I'm going to have with Zane Dangor actually touches on what's next. And I imagine maybe you mean in as far as implementations go for the declarations that have been made, because just because we hosted the G20 summit doesn't mean our problems have disappeared. No, we still have a problem with poverty, as you indicate. The highest levels of unemployment, inequality is an issue. I can go on and on. Global challenges are also there. So those don't cease to exist just because there were world leaders that gathered and had a conversation. But, John Pellman said something so important yesterday as we were broadcasting live from Nasrec. He said, there are certain things that we enjoy today, certain privileges, certain rights that actually started as a proposal during these big, even multilateral discussions, or through these multilateral discussions. Take the issue of gay marriages, for instance. It was a big taboo at some point. But at some point, there were certain countries that would mention it every time there are world leaders who meet, or every time there are important events. Doesn't have to be G20 or the United Nations. And it's just slowly introducing and raising things that at some point, ultimately, they get adopted. Some people who may have dismissed it in the past actually gets to pause and say, actually, let's listen to this, or let's hear what the reasoning is behind this kind of proposal. The point that John Pellman was making yesterday was, yes, you may look at some of the declarations and think, but what does it mean for me now? I mean, when you look at the issue of critical minerals, for instance, that is in the declarations, you are tempted to just yawn because it talks about beneficiation, added value. We can't just be exporters of critical minerals. We've got to add value and be part of the value chain that adds value to those minerals. And we've just not had that opportunity. And perhaps it's our fault, right? The fact that it's in the declarations now doesn't mean there's going to be beneficiation in the next 2 years or in the next year. In fact, you know how long we've been talking about beneficiation as South Africa, but also at a continental level through the African Union. So it's an issue that you still must continuously raise. The fact that it's not been implemented in the past doesn't mean you give up. But governments are able to also use these declarations as a reference point whenever they are formulating policies and the program of action for the next year or the next couple of years. It's 19 minutes now after 9 o'clock. Let's continue with your WhatsApps on 072-702-1702. How do you think South Africa has fared? I know there are some disagreements even around how I was listening to a guest on Bongani's show this morning who suggested that we shouldn't have said no to the Americans when they wanted to send the charge d'affaires. We shouldn't have characterized even their delegation as quote-unquote junior, because remember, our government was very clear that you will receive the equivalent, right? That was very important. If you're sending a charge d'affaires, someone on that equivalence from DERCO will also be sent then to hand over the gavel. But you can't want to breach protocol at the G20. Normally, this is how this is done. And if you can't do that, you don't have to participate. And this guest on Bongani's show argued that why that is unnecessary, because we still need to sit down with the U.S., especially now, because remember, even our tariffs, negotiations around tariffs, that's still continuing. You don't want a tit for tat. You don't know how the U.S. is going to respond. But my argument is, for how long then do you subject yourself to that treatment? Because nobody is arguing here that go and disrespect the U.S. No. But you need to be able to, at the very least, appreciate that you are a sovereign country that must take its sovereign decisions. And you can't be forced into doing things that ordinarily are not done. So were we supposed to just show the other cheek? What do you think of how South Africa also handled that particular issue? Because the argument was, are you going to participate or are you not? And if you're not going to participate, it's very tricky for us to welcome you into the plenary for a ceremonial act where you just want to recognize the handover of power. Let's make it easy for you. You don't have to come here for that ceremonial act. Actually, you can come to Derco to pick up the gavel. Was that a rude thing to do towards the US? I don't necessarily think so. What do you think? More of your WhatsApps.
Clement, it was well organized and planned, window dressed, all good, beautiful speeches, beautiful state posture. The only practical reality is how to unlock local and foreign investment, unleashing capital into this economy without being penalized. So how do you free that up, and how do you actually get people to invest in South Africa without being penalized because of BE, etc. So yeah, beautiful, very nice, but we have to be practical as well. Thank you.
Good morning, Clement. Indeed, the summit was a resounding success. Our country rose to the occasion. CR was, wow, he displayed that indeed he's a statesman. He did well. And it was so lovely to see social media posts of ordinary South Africans being patriotic. And congratulations to those who worked behind the scenes to make this momentous occasion successful. I'm really proud to be a South African. I'm proud of my government, our country. And yes, we have problems like every other country out there, but I think we scored a big win with this one. This is Diketso in Northwold.
Business. I'm really proud about how our honorable president handled the proceedings, and the fact that they took advantage of the US not being there and push an agenda that favors the entire world, as opposed to the propaganda that Trump has been pushing all along. I think it was a good platform for the world to engage on things that are very, very, very critical and important without the bully in the room. So yeah, I'm really proud about how the proceedings were handled.
Good morning, Clement. As a South African, I'm very proud that our country hosted a very successful G20 summit for the first time on the African soil. We showed the whole world that Africans are capable. And it is a lesson to people like President Trump that Africans can succeed without them. And to you as journalists, thank you very much for world-class journalism. We are also proud of you. Thank you very much, Peter Maila Machaba from Letswata.
Hey, Clement. I think our country did really, really well hosting the G20, despite our city's infrastructure challenges and notwithstanding some protests and so on. I think that which just showed democracy at work, actually. But I think that our president did extremely well. I was incredibly proud of him, and I thought he acted very statesmanlike, specifically with regards to how he managed the Donald Trump snubs, because, they really were just snubs. That man is beyond imperious. So I think our president did brilliantly, and well done to all involved.
Yeah, look, we've got to give credit where it's due, but it looks like we know how to rise to the occasion as South Africa. Like, I think our government has the capacity to rise to the occasion when it comes to these world events. And we must take some lessons from that, because we've hosted similar remember the World Cup in 2010? That was like world class. There was the Rugby World Cup 1995. What else? There are a number of events. The Cricket World Cup in the early 2000s. So there's a lot that we have done where we've risen to the occasion. We must just take some lessons from that and use that for how we respond to things domestically and how we do things domestically. Tsepo, you're calling us from Pretoria. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Clement. How are you?
It's Ada.
Clement, look, I don't understand why we seem to be doing so well at the international stage. But, when it comes to internal affairs, we seem to do so badly. I mean, look at the praise that the president has been receiving throughout the weekend on social media platform. Now, the international community, they are back in their respective country. Can't we continue in that very same spirit to make Johannesburg to be the city that want to be? I was listening to one of your colleagues in the morning, President praising, the mayor of Johannesburg, claiming that Johannesburg is at its best.
What happened to Tsepo there? Oh, Tsepo got cut off. Let's see if we can have him back on the line. Tsepo was calling us there from Pretoria. I think his line got cut off. Let's go to some WhatsApps in the meantime.
Morning, Clement. Yes, a very proud moment for the country. So now we just need to push forward, be consistent, especially from the president and the government. Let this not only be for the G20 summit, but also pushing forward in service delivery, high impact service delivery for the country as well. Not only because we had a G20 summit, which was very successful, highly successful, very proud moment indeed. But now we just need some consistency from the president and the government in pushing forward with delivering such services, not only to other nations, but also to the country as a whole. Thank you.
Good morning, Clement and team. Luanda here. South Africa really did a great job in hosting the G20. I really appreciated the president's leadership, the way he handled things, the way he handled America. Sometimes you just need to take a stand, and I was happy that he did so, and it was a strong one. And so congratulations, Cupcake. You did a phenomenal job, and we are extremely proud. We are proud to be South Africans today.
Morena Khoshi Madimej Ralo Chapapa. Look, we are proud. We are proud of the stance and the position of our leadership in South Africa. Yes, it doesn't mean we are going to vote ANC, but the reality is this man did well. He became a voice for the entire Africa. He became a leadership that we have been desiring to see. And we are proud, regardless of how many disagreements we have. This week, our president did well. And we as South Africans can boldly stand and say this is the kind of voice we've been hoping and praying to see in the position of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. It's going up to 9:30. Let's get the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. We're going to come back with more of your calls on 011-883-0702. You can send us a WhatsApp as well on 072-702-1702. What's your assessment of the G20 summit? I mean, we hosted the BRICS summit not so long ago. Now it's the G20 summit. I mean, we are part of, there's no way you can take for granted our country. I think this has really firmly placed us in global conversations. And that is quite an important thing. When you have platforms like this, you're able to advance the interests not only of your country, but you advance the interests of the continent. Ordinarily, I mean, when you look at the declarations, you see how many times Africa has been mentioned. Probably over 80 times. That's never happened before. It's never happened before that at a G20 summit, you've got issues that are quite important and central to this continent of Africa. And continental issues, they feature so prominently in the declarations, in the leaders' declarations from the G20 summit. That is a big deal. Sviso, good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. The body of a woman has been recovered from a river in KwaZulu-Natal as the search for two more missing people continues. The victims were washed away yesterday during floods in New Hanover in the Midlands. KwaZulu-Natal has been hit by heavy downpours with an orange level 6 alert, with severe thunderstorms causing localized flooding. Trade and Industry Minister Park Stawu says South Africa is expected to continue lobbying for the extension of AGOA after a crippling government shutdown ended in the US almost 2 weeks ago. In addition to the impact on the US, the stalemate also put on ice South Africa's bid to review the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which lapsed in September. AGOA, which was established in the year 2000, exempts eligible African countries from taxes on their exports to the US. And there are hopes in Nigeria that more than 200 children kidnapped from a Catholic school will be released. 50 pupils managed to escape from captivity over the weekend, and they are now reunited with their families. Armed bandits kidnapped 303 children and 12 teachers last Friday. And those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 10 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Travelling on the N3 South, we still have got that accident right near Van Buren Road causing delays from the Kilulis interchange. While heading towards Sunny Hill, do expect bumper-to-bumper traffic on the N3 North. This is between Vincent Chabalala Road and the Baklu interchange. Please use the M1 North towards Sunny Hill as well as Woodmead while travelling. On the R21 North, some delays just as you approach Olifantsfontein Road, and that's due to the roadworks that are taking place along that route causing these delays. And there's also some delays reported on the M1 South due to more roadworks. This is just as you come out of Grayson Drive towards Collett Drive. Please be on the lookout. And it's also raining in some parts of Gauteng this morning, so please drive with care, keep your headlights on and avoid speeding and keep a safe following distance. More updates coming up at the top of the hour. Stay tuned.
There's more EWN on air, online and on the EWN app.
Africa Milani.
Weekday mornings,
4 to 6.
What were some of the main takeaways for you from COP30?
One of the takeaways for us basically around the COP30 was that the conference managed to agree on certain things. Number one, the forest finance was actually basically one of the things that was agreed upon. It talks about the long-term reliable finance for the countries to protect their forests.
Thabo Sibeko is a programs manager at EarthLife Africa. Reflections on the COP30, which was held in Belém in Brazil, concluding on Saturday.
Africa Milani.
4 to 6 on 702.
Corporates That Care promotes and encourages corporate leaders and all citizens to walk the talk for a better South Africa. Catch Corporates That Care this Wednesday at 10 to 9, featuring Total Energies. Their corporate affairs and CSI manager, Talita Sachani, will be in conversation with Bongani Bingwa. Join us every Wednesday as we highlight the efforts of companies and brands dedicated to building our country. Corporates That Care is a Prime Media Cares initiative with 702 and Prime Media Outdoor. 702, let's walk the talk and make a difference together.
At Chamberlain's, there's something for everyone. From building supplies for the home renovators to garden essentials for the homemakers. From power tools for the DIY doers to painting supplies for the patio Picassos. We even have coffee for the slightly sleepy and snacks for the young ones. And for the ones who can never quite find what they're looking for, we have you covered too. With our promise to find and source whatever you need. Chamberlain's, famous for hardware since 1903.
Do you suffer from heartburn and hyperacidity? To relieve heartburn for the whole day and night with one tablet, a potent once-a-day treatment which was previously prescription only is now available over the counter. Ask your pharmacist for an over-the-counter, long-lasting heartburn treatment. Brought to you by Sandoz.
The Money Show.
Weekday evenings at 6.
On the next Money Show, we'll hear from the chief executives of African Bank, Netcare and PPC as they unpack their latest company results. Then we turn to the art world with Marlies van Sail, CEO of Aspire Art. Plus, we'll bring you expert analysis of all of the top business news of the day.
The Money Show
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Curtis is brought to you by ABSA CIB. Invested in your story and inviting you to write it with them. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Your voice.
Your station.
Your open line.
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela.
On 702.
25 minutes before 10 o'clock. This is the 702 open line. We've been reflecting so far how the G20 summit was run, and also the outcomes of the G20 summit, because that's pretty important. If you have managed to look through the declarations or you've heard on the radio, what are you most happy about that the matter has gotten the attention of these world powerful, influential leaders? There are so many issues, of course, on the G20 Leaders Declaration. Issues that place this continent, there are issues that are of this continent that were placed at the heart of the declarations, issues that ordinarily wouldn't really find that level of global attention. Are there declarations that you thought were important? Are there things that piqued your interest during this weekend? Someone just sent me a message, in fact, and I'm going to ask you about this thing that they've asked me about. Have you noticed that the Indian Prime Minister, whenever he comes, particularly in this country, you often have people who come out to his hotel, or they'll come to wherever he's going to be addressing, like at the BRICS summit, if you'll remember the last time, there was an Indian community, that came with placards celebrating the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. Which other leaders do you see that happen with? And this person who sent me this message said, I'm wondering if it's a rented crowd or there's genuine love for their leader, because it is fascinating. Do you know, if this is something that gets organized, or these are just, people who appreciate the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi? Please let me know on 011-883-0702. I thought this was an interesting observation. I just don't have the answer. I've never really had conversations with the people who often come out to hold placards to greet the Prime Minister wherever he stays, at the hotel or at these gatherings that he attends. What do you think of that? And is it something that you have also equally noticed? 011-883-0702. Your WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. Chris, you're calling us from Springs. What are your thoughts? Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and thank you for the opportunity, my brother. Let me doff my hat off to President Cyril Ramaphosa and his government for a sterling work. In fact, we have proven over time that we are, in fact, a country capable of hosting big international events, from the sports itself to geopolitics and stuff like that. And I must also actually not actually take away from a journalist, yourself, and many other media practitioners, in fact, for making sure that you actually bring this news to us, to our television screens and radio as well alike. Although, Clement, just want maybe to echo Julius Malema's sentiments on calling upon African leaders who were mum when the president was thrown under the bus or was under attack from the U.S. president, as to why are they quiet, not actually throwing their way in support of the President Ramaphosa, taking into account that we have the AU, which is coming up in January, and they'll be talking unity in Africa and so forth. So is there any unity if one of our own has been actually left to fend for himself? But above all, a big up to the president and government, and thank you for the opportunity once again.
Thanks, Chris. And you ask a very important question, because do we even speak yet as are we a united voice as the African Union? And that's what they've been trying to build for the longest of time. Here's the tricky part about dealing with the US, in my view. You can't necessarily want to join the fight that doesn't involve you, because you'll catch strays. If Donald Trump, the president of the US, is somehow having disagreements or there are tensions with the leader of Nigeria, for instance, if our president comes out and enters that debate and that quote-unquote fight, because this is the US you're dealing with, you do have to think about the consequences of that intervention, of your involvement. And look, I agree with you. I think we need to speak as a collective voice, especially as the African Union. I mean, we are the youngest population is on this continent. We often talk about how we need to seek markets. Well, there's a market here on the continent, over 1 billion people. And for some reason, we still aren't able to speak collectively as one. And that is a bit concerning. But I think people are scared. People are scared to intervene because at the end of the day, when you sit down with the US, it's you and them. And they may take you back to some of the things that you have said or some of your allegiances. Remember, Trump didn't even want us to be part of BRICS. He threatened that any country, whatever happened to that threat, by the way? Because Donald Trump said, any country that aligns with BRICS is going to get an additional tariff. Remember? What happened to that? Was it just what? Was it just a threat for vibes? My goodness. Well, there are countries that still, in fact, at the time, there were meetings in Brazil, I remember, when he made these comments. And there are countries that still are aligned to BRICS. In fact, there are countries that still want to be aligned to BRICS. So I guess that was just, he wanted to threaten people against their allegiance to BRICS. The other thing, even with like something like the G20 where collective decisions are taken, that's why there was concern. In fact, Zane Dangor, you'll hear, one of the things they were concerned about is the longer this declaration is open and it's still undergoing the changes, the more you open the door for possibility of influence on other countries to sort of object to the declaration. So it was strategic to actually adopt it quite earlier when there was still consensus in the room, because otherwise the US may get to the other countries, if that was their plan, to try and get them to object to the declaration, because you can't argue that there's consensus when there have been other people who raised their hands and objected to that declaration. So that's something else. But whatever action you do, even at G20, at some point you have to sit down with the US administration when you negotiate your tariffs. And you find more and more that there are more world leaders that don't want to enter fights that don't involve them because they don't want to catch and face the consequences. John, you're calling us from Rudeport. What are your thoughts? Good morning.
Morning, Clement.
Sure.
Wow, what a proud moment. What a proud moment. Very happy to be South African. But I think Cyril should have just maybe actually made it a point that this is not about America. I mean, it's about Trump. It's his personal issues he's got with everybody else. And it should have just been drilled at this summit that, listen, we've worked with America before. We haven't seen these actions before. So this is about Mr. Trump. So he needs to grow up, and that's it. Obviously in a nice way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, John, in Rudeport, I think, he may have tried. Ronald Lamola, Khumbuzo Ntshavheni, all of them, whenever they've been asked the question over the weekend about the U.S., in fact, before even this G20 summit, they've consistently said, we want the U.S. to be part of this. The U.S. is an important part of G20. They were consistent in that. That was the message. Yes, we're in discussions with the U.S. because they may want to change their participation here. Maybe they want to come in a different form. We're engaging with them. Even when accreditation is closed, they were still able and willing to have that conversation. So respect was afforded. In fact, they were asked, they were begged. Our president had to go to America, treated like a little kid, in the Oval Office, being scolded like that, because part of the plan is not just the negotiations around trade, but it was, we have to hand over the G20 presidency to you. And it's important that you come to South Africa for that. And I think had Trump been here, maybe that would have been an opportunity for him to see for himself that there is no genocide on white South Africans. But what a missed opportunity by America. In fact, some analysts were arguing at Nasrec this weekend that it's a good thing that they didn't come because the whole G20 would have been about America. And now it has not been about America. Yes, on the fringes, that has been the issue that's lurking. But actually, substantial issues were discussed. Dumelo, you're calling us from Centurion. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Madimecha. How are you?
Sure, man. Go ahead.
So, even though he was not here present, Trump, but his destruction it could still be felt. And I concur with that sentiment. But my point here is, well done to the president and the country in terms of what we have performed. But the question becomes, what happens when he leaves? Because with the ANC now alleging that they may be recalling him, will the coming president be able to sustain what Cyril One has managed to achieve, to bring back the voice of South African sovereignty in the whole world, the position of our country in geopolitics, and the amount and sheer respect that we have now get as Pretoria. So that is something which is very concerning for me, because he may be recalled anytime soon, but what then happens going forward? So that is the question which I think the ANC or the leadership of the country should be very careful in terms of how they manage this transition, because the work and the stride that Cyril has achieved, it can amount to zero. So, but other than that, well done to the president and the leadership, particularly Lamola. He has really grown in stature. One of the guys which I think maybe they may consider, because he's a diplomacy, they behave like a statesman. But in closing, the point you've mentioned about Africa not speaking in unison when one of their own is under attack, Namibian president, she was outstanding. She came out and defended Cyril. But we saw nobody in even the African Union, even the chairperson of the African Union, they have never issued a statement. But when Trump attacked Nigeria on the fake, I don't know when I say the fake, on the issue that Christian under attack, I saw the AU chairperson issuing a statement. So there are a lot of contrasting behavior in terms of Africa to a larger extent, where I believe that maybe they just don't want to be associated with South Africa, or they think like maybe we think we are better, because nobody says anything. And that is quite concerning. But other than that, big up to the president. He did us proud, Mr. Buffalo. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Timelo. Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Cupcake. So many nicknames our president has, hey? It's 13 minutes before 10.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable. You receive up to 745,000 rand worth of legal services per year. Our range of plans include cover for you, your spouse, children, and extended family. Plans include cover for civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Whether it's protection orders, gender-based violence, uncontested divorce, or poor service, your Clientele Legal lawyer will be there to assist you. Our services are convenient. Simply pick up the phone and call your lawyer, or send us an email and we'll get back to you. All plans include a bail benefit of up to 5,000 rand, and we'll go to the police station and pay it for you. Plus, Clientele Legal offers you 24-hour telephonic legal advice. SMS Legal to 48721. That's legal to 48721. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
So Taryn, you've just graduated cum laude, but nothing says you're a genius quite like selling your car to WeBuyCars.
Absolutely. My car was an 18th birthday present, and it's time to move on to something a bit more mature.
So where did you hear about WeBuyCars?
All of my friends are using WeBuyCars. I would have had legit FOMO if I hadn't used them. And it was so quick. I did it on my laptop while sending around my CV.
Smart move, Taryn. Graduated and upgraded. WeBuyCars. Geared for success. Geared for you.
You know what success looks like. Now discover why focus is the driving force behind every success story. Catch 702 in conversation with Momentum on The Money Show with Stephen Critters every Thursday, discussing the science of success. Step into the mindset of top financial achievers and discover how your thinking, behavior, and focus can shape lasting financial success. That's 702 in conversation with Momentum. Thursdays on The Money Show with Stephen Critters. Momentum, your journey to success on 702. Momentum is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider. Your voice.
Your station.
Your open line.
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
10 minutes before 10 o'clock. Back to your calls and WhatsApps. Dorothy, you calling us? Oh, we've just lost Dorothy there. Dorothy in Lone Hill. Let's bring Dorothy back. Let's go to your WhatsApps on 072 702 and 702.
Good morning, Clemens. I'd like to remain anonymous. I'm very proud of the way the South African president reacted towards Donald Trump, the international bully. And if he's going to try and threaten us with withholding his resources, we are big now. We've grown, so we need to help ourselves. It's time we stood on our own little feet and showed the world that we are not a stupid nation. We can do it for ourselves.
Good day, Clement and the 702 listeners. I'd like to just say now I'm proud of our President Ramaphosa. He did very well and he stand his ground and not to be bullied. And the G20 went very well. Everything was okay. For me, it was wonderful. That's what I can say. Thank you from Justice Chamusi. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Justice. Dorothy, you are in Lone Hill. Good morning.
Hi, Clement.
Hi.
I'm just wanting to say South Africans must stop being negative about their own country. The biggest problem is South Africans. I speak to people on the ground ongoing. Just yesterday, we must get out. It's all bad. You know, if South Africans can change their attitude, foreigners come here and tell me, why are South Africans so negative about their own country? And I don't think we see many problems. Probably if we start paying for our services and also start doing things for ourselves. There are people that's read this book, Carsinomics, that have gone out and do things for themselves. People in Kenya did very much that after colonialism. They didn't wait for the government to knock on their front doors. And I reckon the government has overwhelming problems with the colonial past and corruption. And those are things that they're trying to deal with, but let any of us that are negative go and do that job. And I'll tell you, it's not just this G20. The president works his sides off. He works day and night. He's in this country, in that country. We just travel locally, we're exhausted. But this man pushes. And it's not just a G20, but I don't think he ever slept. His eyes looked so exhausted. And he just kept going. So maybe South Africans must acknowledge what our president does on so many fronts.
Yeah. Dorothy, I saw videos, in fact, of him. He was so heavily involved. Videos of him at almost midnight. He's still like, they're deciding, okay, is this flower pot right? Should we put it here or is it better here? He wanted to go to do, a walkabout at Nasrec late in the evening before the day of the summit. So he was heavily involved. He's worked really hard, and I think we must appreciate that. Thank you for your call, Dorothy. Saul, you're in Highlands North. What are your thoughts? Hi.
Yeah, hi. Firstly, I do commend SA on a brilliant G20. But the question I do ask myself is, what happens to the rest of the years, or the years? I mean, take Johannesburg for instance. There are many areas where street lights and roads, etc., need to be fixed and rehabilitated and so on. And I mean, you can shout from the rooftops and you can barely get the people out. Yet when we have an event and there's crisis management going, then suddenly we see everybody. We see traffic cops, we see police on the roads, we see roads being fixed. So tell me, why can't this be extrapolated to the rest of the year, or to et cetera? Why do citizens themselves have to, as somebody said, we should do the work ourselves? I don't have a problem with that, but what are we paying services for? Unless we have a crisis in this country, when everybody has to get together in a crisis. Otherwise, it's like a laissez-faire attitude.
Yeah, we need to learn from things like that. I think, as I said, I've used the analogy of a family gathering. Sometimes when there's a gathering in your own home, you rally resources, don't you? You make sure that you paint where you have neglected to paint before. You make sure that you clean the house, spring cleaning. It's got to be done because there are visitors that are coming. Equally so, while it is important for us to be ready for such a world event like that, which you have no choice but to really just rise to the occasion, that's very important. And we can't negate the significance of being ready and actually rallying resources for an event like this. But at the same time, I understand why there's frustration, and we've spoken about this before. Frustration among South Africans who feel like, but I've complained about this thing that you're fixing now for so many years, and you've never heard me. And some of the things are just the easy, simple things, because people are paying for their rates. All they're asking is deliver the services. You've been paid to do that. That's all they're asking. So I get it. I get why people get frustrated when things suddenly start to work. I mean, the police visibility in the Johannesburg area this weekend, that's what people yearn for. People who are tired of crime. Let's wrap up with these WhatsApps.
The president didn't have to do much. He only had to howl and utter one phrase, Wahafa Trump. Now all of a sudden he's now our hero. He's now our messiah again. G20 is over. We are going back to our shacks, unemployed, poor, scared of criminals, and that's how life is. But what happened this week shows that it's easy to rule over South Africans. You just utter one word that you come down to their level, and then from there they hail you as a hero.
Good morning, Clement, and all 702 listeners. Look, Clement, it was a very great proceedings. We really have to give credit where it's due. But one thing that I've really noticed is that our government has the capacity and the capability to run this country smoothly. If they were able to do so with the G20, look, the number of law enforcement officers who were on the ground. Clement, for the first time in history, of all weekends, I felt very safe. So this really gave us an indication that if they were to decide and say to themselves they want to tackle crime, they want to run this country in a successful manner, they can do so. Not only when there's visitors, but they did very well on the G20.
Part of the 702 family.
From the undeniable chemistry of Bongani and Adam on The World View, to hanging out with Clement, to sports and good things too with Mandy and Brent, discussing the upside of failure with Relebohile Maboja, to a song, a book and a dish with John. Who can forget Stephen navigating us through personal finance? 702 has everything for everyone. It's informative, it's witty, it's real. Let's walk the talk. Balisa in Waterfall.
Welcome to our 702 family. Let's walk the talk.
You are not dreaming. You are repeating. Insurance, pineapple. Insurance, pineapple. Insurance, pineapple. Insurance, pineapple. Pineapple FSP 48650 is underwritten by Omart Insure Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We are also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comments, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we are not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. Email bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more, visit bccsa.co.za.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. One body has been recovered from a river in KwaZulu-Natal as a search for two more missing people continues. The victims were washed away yesterday during floods in New Hanover in the Midlands. KwaZulu-Natal has been hit by heavy downpours with an orange level 6 alert with severe thunderstorms causing localized flooding. KZN Cooperative Governance Department spokesperson Senzelo Mzila says rescue crews found the body this morning.
Disaster management teams are currently on scene in Injisuti River in the Ward 2 of the Umshwathi local municipality, New Hanover. Currently, the teams are working to recover one body, that of a female, that is entrapped in the river. The embassy for Kokta, Reverend Lasisi Buthelezi, has assured residents that disaster management teams will work right throughout the clock to ensure that those that are missing are recovered.
While it pours in Johannesburg this morning, motorists are being warned to drive with caution. The South African Weather Service has issued an orange level 5 alert for severe thunderstorms in Gauteng, Mpumalanga and Limpopo today. Forecaster Lihlohonolo Tobela.
A possibility of damaging winds as well as a possibility of hail and excessive lightning expected over the northwest, Free State, Gauteng, Mpumalanga as well as parts of Limpopo into the central and the western parts of KwaZulu-Natal.
The inquiry into Johannesburg prosecution's boss Andrew Chauke resumes this morning with NPA head Shamila Batoyi back on the witness stand. The commission kicked off last week with Batoyi as its first witness. She's the main complainant in the case against Chauke, accusing him of making politically motivated prosecutorial decisions. Khomotso Modise reports.
The main cases that Andrew Chauke is being probed for is the 2012 racketeering charges against former KZN Hawks boss Johan Boysen, charges that were later withdrawn, and the decision not to charge former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli for the 1999 murder of a man he shared a lover with. Last week, the inquiry had only dealt with Boysen's matter, in which NPA head Shamila Batoyi testified that Chauke had no business leading the prosecution's team, which was investigating the matter because he's the Johannesburg prosecution's boss. The commission also experienced several administrative hiccups last week, with the panel led by retired Justice Besan Kabinde pointing out the poor pagination of documents, among other challenges. Evidence leader Advocate David Mhlamonyane assured the commission that he would be ready this morning. Khomotso Modise, Eyewitness News.
Trade and Industry Minister Parks Dawu says South Africa is expected to continue lobbying for the extension of AGOA after a crippling government shutdown ended in the US almost 2 weeks ago. In addition to the impact on the US, the stalemate also put on ice South Africa's bid to review the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which lapsed in September. AGOA, which was established in the year 2000, exempts eligible African countries from taxes on their exports to the US. And despite renewed tensions between Pretoria and Washington over US President Donald Trump's decision to snub the G20 Leaders Summit in Joburg over the weekend, Dawu says South Africa hopes it will be business as usual on trade matters.
Now that Congress has actively resumed, ours is to go back to Congress. The argument has always been this is a decision made by Congress, therefore you need congressmen and women to be in session to be able to engage. And now that they are back there, we'll certainly be continuing our lobbying for AGOA.
And there are hopes in Nigeria that more than 200 children kidnapped from a Catholic school will be released alive and safe. 50 pupils managed to escape from captivity over the weekend, and they now have been reunited with their families. Armed bandits kidnapped 303 children and 12 teachers last Friday. 253 pupils and 12 teachers are still held by the kidnappers. The abduction is just the latest in a wave of attacks by armed groups that target vulnerable civilian populations and orchestrate mass abductions for ransom. Gold is trading at $4,105.70 an ounce. The rand is at 17.35 to the dollar, 22.74 to the pound, 19.93 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $62.58 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we've got delays on the N12 as well as the R24 West between Edenville Road and the Kilulis interchange while traveling. On the N3 North, delays between Van Buren Road and the Kilulis turnoff.
A cloudy day in store for Gauteng, along with showers and thunder showers. The temperatures will peak at highs between 24 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour: one body has been recovered from a river in KwaZulu-Natal as the search for two more missing people continues.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's Walk the Talk, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app,
DSTV channel 856,
92.7 and 106 FM.
6 minutes after 10 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the second hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thanks for staying with us here on 702, and thank you for your calls and your WhatsApps and your tweets on the 702 open line. What a positive open line today. It's not always that there's just positive energy on the open line. So, I will take that, embrace it. Put it somewhere, because we must remember these moments, even in our moments of frustration. This doesn't mean our problems are over. This doesn't mean that we sometimes are going to have a government that is unresponsive, that is uncaring, that is corrupt, some of them. Those things still are there. But I think even in the midst of all of that, we must remember that it's not all doom and gloom. There are other things that we can still be happy about and be positive about. There are things that we can and should be outraged about. As I promised, the conversation with Zane Dangor begins now. He's the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. He served as the G20 Sherpa. So this is the man that was leading negotiations and making sure that G20 countries are aligned on the issues that would be adopted through a leaders' declaration at the summit. Before we started the show this morning, I recorded a conversation with him. Here's how it went. Mr. Dangor, thank you so much for making time for us, and congratulations on organizing and running a successful G20 summit.
No, thanks, and it's good to be with you, Clement.
Yeah. What did it take? I mean, because I kept explaining over the weekend as we were broadcasting live from Nasrec that this is not work that sort of just started this weekend. So yes, we talk about the G20 summit, but it's a culmination of negotiations and a lot of work that's happened over the last 12 months.
So it's more than 12 months, right? So when we knew from the midway into Brazil's presidency, we started doing our preparation already. So defining the themes was one thing. Looking at where would the ideal venue be for an event in South Africa, what are the actors that need to be involved from a content development perspective to logistics, what is the architecture that we needed to put in place to ensure that we can have a whole of government approach. So that work started quite some time ago. Then, of course, with the start of our presidency, the very first Sherpa meeting, for example, was December 2024. And that Sherpa meeting, which was a joint meeting with the finance track, laid the basis for us to articulate what our priorities are, what our themes are, and to get the buy-in of the other members of the G20 and also those international organizations and guest countries participating. That then led into, putting a calendar of events for an entire year into place. And the calendar events would be the ministerial meetings. But then before every ministerial meeting, you're going to have a number of working group meetings that prepares the basis for the ministerial discussions to take place.
Yeah.
So this calendar of events spanned 10 months, generally. So it was an intense 10 months. Within that, we had foreign ministers meeting, 2 of those. We had 4 Sherpa meetings, the last one being the most important always in the G20 calendar, where everything that has happened, every working group, every finance track decision is subjected to checking and renegotiations, and of course also the geopolitics having to be negotiated, and then packaging all of this with line by line negotiations and agreement in the last 5 days. But also, of course, there's virtual negotiations also took place. So it's been quite an intense period. So as you pointed out, it's not a 2-day. What you see in the 2 days is really the outcome of more than 12 months work.
Yeah. So given the current geopolitical dynamics, did that make it difficult behind the scenes during the negotiations with other Sherpas?
The negotiations in the G20 can be difficult under the best of circumstances, particularly on geopolitical matters. But this year has been described as perhaps more difficult than others. Comparisons were made with President Trump's first term when Japan was the G20 president in 2019, where you had a formulation that was arrived at 19 plus 1, because the U.S. wouldn't be part of any consensus, and then particularly on climate action. What we've encountered this time around is, not joining a consensus, but refusing to participate, and using misinformation as the basis for that non-participation. And then in the last couple of months, weeks really, suggesting that after agreeing to participate and participating in the ministerial and then suddenly deciding not to participate, the procedures and rules of the G20 had to be negotiated and discussed at the Sherpa level, because this was unprecedented. The voluntary absenteeism of a member, we had to then discuss what does this mean for consensus, and eventually we all agreed that consensus is about those who participate, and there's no prohibition of anybody participating, right? So it changes. You can obviously not say you can arrive at consensus if 2 or 3 delegations, for example, are not given visas to participate, or are prohibited from coming to meetings. This was not the case. This was a case of voluntary absenteeism, and then a demand linked to that you cannot have an outcome if we are not there voluntarily. It laid the basis for discussion on how you arrive at consensus in the G20, but also what it means for multilateralism generally, where unilateral action should not be allowed to undermine the will of the collective. And that's what we arrived at.
And speaking of consensus, one of the successes of the summit is that you were able to secure consensus on the joint declaration on the first day of the summit. Just take us through what was happening behind the scenes, because that was quite a key diplomatic move there. It was quite strategic, but how were you able to do that?
Look, the negotiations was intense, and it's not the first time this was done. I can't give you the instance, but I think in India there was also a early announcement of the declaration, so that the discussions could then continue, right? But there was a significant feeling by the leaders, and of course informed by the Sherpas, that we need to conclude the declaration as soon as possible, so that we get into the details of the thematics, so that leaders can speak on the thematics. We don't want leaders to engage in negotiations that those who are reporting to them and have laid the basis are already done, right? So, because of the behind-the-scenes note verbal, we were also quite aware that pressure would be put on. The longer the document stays open and not approved, there could be pressures. But many leaders approached our own leader and suggested, let's gavel the declaration at the beginning, so that we have the basis to speak freely on the themes going forward in a in a meeting that needed to address critical issues on critical minerals, artificial intelligence, debt sustainability, and that worked out, and that's why it was such a successful meeting. Is that it was all about substance, because the substance had been negotiated, and the document had been negotiated and agreed right up front. And it's, as you pointed out, it's only fair that you do that, because essentially leaders don't negotiate.
Yeah.
That's up to us to do so.
Yeah. What reservations did Argentina have, and how did you resolve those? Because after it was announced that consensus was secured, and then Argentina came out and said, we need to be honest when sufficient consensus has not been secured. How did you resolve that?
So Argentina was very flexible in the negotiations, and in the Shepherd meeting, Argentina's red lines were gender equality, sustainable development goals. Okay. Yeah. And then they were basically questioning whether you could have a consensus without the US, even if they were consenting, right? But they were negotiating towards that kind of consensus. And we had agreed on a formulation in the very first paragraph of the declaration, which indicated that this does not include the US. It says those leaders gathered here. And we had a huge discussion about whether we footnote specifically the US. And the feeling was, no, then we're particularizing the US. And it's better just to talk about those gathered here. So Argentina was part of that consensus. And it was only on the last day after they left the room around past midnight of the day, in a few hours before we were to gavel, that they were not there then to bring in any other red line that we didn't know about. And then so the issue about talking about occupied Palestinian territories was raised as a concern. They didn't want that.
But that ended up in the declaration.
It did, because you see, but that was after the negotiations.
Oh, okay.
And that's accepted legal. We didn't say Palestine. The initial language was Palestine.
Yeah.
Because we said Sudan, DRC, Palestine, and Ukraine. Now you must understand the balance of these things is that you're not going to get the Europeans agreeing to a declaration without mentioning Ukraine. For South Africa, Sudan, DRC was important, and for everybody, mentioning Palestine was important, because we're looking at the gravest wars and conflicts, right? We use gravity as a defining who do we mention, and because you could have had an option of not mentioning any countries, but that would not have suited many delegations. So we then changed it through negotiations into using the occupied Palestinian territories and not Palestine, which was the key concern from Argentina. So when they raised that in plenary, it was their concern that we had negotiations. We all agreed on this, but they're still unhappy about it. It's not about disassociating themselves. Yeah,
they're just noting that, but that doesn't change the declaration that's been accepted. It's so fascinating, Director General, because one of the things I've enjoyed doing is just study the language during these kind of discussions, because it's almost like every word matters, like the word you use, the comma, the full stop, because you need consensus. So one of the things I was really impressed by is how the summit has firmly placed the interests of the continent at the heart of conversations. I mean, there are many African issues that have found expression in the declarations that were adopted. Do you look at the declarations as South Africa and say, okay, we have achieved what we actually wanted to achieve out of this G20 summit?
Yes, I mean, every single one of South Africa's priorities is agreed. Some of them stand alone. So, for example, in inclusive development, it was agreed. Our critical minerals framework was agreed. Disaster resilience was agreed to. Artificial intelligence, for the common good, I'm just using the colloquial language, was agreed. Debt sustainability was agreed to. So all of the priorities that we felt was important for us, but was also important for the African continent, was agreed to. and we had certain issues that we felt that were cross-cutting that had to be in a declaration negotiated in South Africa. So gender equality and the empowerment of women, for example, which was another red line for the US and Argentina. But I must say Argentina was so flexible when it came to a situation where on gender equality, I asked the Argentinian Shepherd to facilitate a small group to get to consensus amongst those who, and he did that, and they delivered that. I mean, it took us 8 hours to just negotiate one paragraph, but really all of the key issues for the African continent and our perspective was delivered in this. The challenge is always about how do you then translate this into policies and strategies that are implementable at national levels. But it's about how we hold ourselves accountable to implement what we agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of implementation, what's next? Because, unity is when multilateralism has won, but where to from now? Because I would imagine the real work really starts now. And are you at all worried about some of the resolutions of the summit possibly going to be dropped next year when the US takes over the presidency?
Clement, I think to a certain extent we future-proofed our priorities. So the report on inequality is a standalone report. We asked our members to endorse and support, but we're not going to negotiate it because we felt that the inequality report needed to go beyond the G20. It needed to be championed by UNECA, the AU, the UN. And one of the recommendations, for example, on the establishment of a technical committee to monitor inequality and report on that was supported. And already the UN is looking at how do they take this up as part of their mandate, right? So then also the panel discussions, the panel report chaired by former Minister Manuel included the debt sustainability issue. That already is going to be taken up by UNECA and others to look at how do we use the momentum that the G20 had agreed to this to shape how debt sustainability is championed within the IMF and the World Bank. Again, it's standalone because we also felt, the continuity is important, but and continuity then leads to implementation. Because what we agree this year gets refined in 1 or 2 years and then gets implemented. We are aware that the US is going to have a narrow agenda next year. They're going to look at debt, energy, and deregulation, which means that all of these priorities may not be taken up, but we future-proofed it so that it can be implemented without having to rely on it being subjected to the normal practice of continuity.
Yeah. How do you track progress? Because one question that a lot of South Africans have been asking, at least on my show, is how does this benefit me, and how do we make sure that what is resolved at the summit, doesn't just fall part of the 2025 resolutions, but there's a tracking mechanisms and there's a continual commitment from the different governments.
It's the, plurilateral like the G20 and multilateral discussions people don't see there's no linear impact in the short term, right? If you just take the critical minerals framework, what that leads to is a policy discussion in the AU. And it also means that those who want to stick to extractive economies now have a document and a baseline, even though it's voluntary, that guides the norms around how you extract minerals. It means that national governments must look at how we take this and implement policies to align with it. So in the G20, we do look at have countries develop the national capacities to implement what has been agreed to. And this is something that happens across the multilateral space. We need to hold ourselves accountable as South Africa, for example. If we agree to, whether it's in Brazil or here, that we're going to, for example, have a progressive taxation regime where, given what the inequality report talks about, that inequality is distorted more severely now than it has been previously, in that you've got the rise of billionaires who pay almost no tax, in some of the industries, and that you can actually tax them in a certain way to drive development, or you can also then, in the critical mineral space, define the policies that lay the legitimacy for beneficiation at source, so that financial institutions are compelled to a certain extent to support it. There can be no unilateral action to disrupt supply chains, whether through force or other coercive measures, because there's now agreement that we all agree that beneficiation at source is preferable to extractive forms. This does, in the end, if implemented, change the way economies are structured, which have a definite and direct benefit to South Africans and other Africans. But it's holding ourselves accountable to take those words and translate them into policies.
Mm-hmm. The decision we've taken when the U.S. wanted to send the chargé d'affaires to the closing ceremony for the handover of the presidency, are you worried at all as South Africa around how you've approached this? Because you're still trying to speak to the U.S. Trade negotiations are still continuing. We're still begging them to reconsider, and there are some people who are concerned that the way that we have approached this and saying to their delegation, well, we're not going to have you come here because that's a breach of protocol, may get the U.S. to retaliate. Is that a concern?
So let's just put this in context. So you plan the entire conference. You send out a note about when you have to have your accreditation in place. Because, the accreditation, and we closed the accreditation at a certain time. The U.S. had announced that no official will be allowed to participate. So they did not send any request for accreditation at the point where there was a closing. Okay. So there's also the technical thing is we didn't allow accreditations from those participating after the date. Because that's just the rules of it. And that includes senior people, right? Because it was well communicated well in advance. The U.S. then makes an announcement which they then contradicted themselves. So there's an announcement from the State Department saying we want to accredit the junior officials to come and receive the handover. But they use the word participation.
Yeah.
Then there's a statement from the White House saying there's no such thing. Okay, there is no such thing as them wanting to participate. They don't want to participate in the G20. They just want to get there to be part of the ceremonial handover. So what we were saying is, firstly, accreditation is closed, and we cannot accede to the manner in which the request for accreditation was passed through. Right? It came towards the end. We then said the request for dealing with this could then be done outside of, and also because getting into the room, you cannot get into the room purely to observe as a partner. So rather than disrupt the entire process, we would do the handover outside of the formal summit itself, and that's what we agreed to. It's not that we want to be vindictive, or we're saying that we don't want you in the room. It was just difficult to get them in the room under the circumstances that they wanted.
Okay.
Because when you sit behind that flag, you're a participant.
Yeah. Zane Dangor?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making time for us. And once again, well done. I really appreciate your time. Zane Dangor is the Director General at International Relations Department.
Thank you.
10:30, time for the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. So good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. One body has been recovered from a river in KwaZulu-Natal as the search for two more missing people continues. The victims were washed away yesterday during floods in New Hanover in the Midlands. KwaZulu-Natal has been hit by heavy downpours with an orange level 6 alert, with severe thunderstorms causing localized flooding. Social development officials in George have received a tongue lashing from members of parliament for the way they handled the deadly building collapse. The Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure travelled to the Southern Cape town to conduct hearings with families of the victims, and many who turned up say the Social Development Department failed to give them the support they needed. And while French President Emmanuel Macron has questioned the value and longevity of the G20, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he hopes the review of the collective conducted under South Africa's presidency will serve as a helpful guide to ensure the G20 remains fit for purpose in an ever-changing world. Closing the two-day Leaders Summit in Johannesburg yesterday, Ramaphosa said the review should continue into next year. South Africa has used its presidency to place the priorities of Africa and the Global South at the heart of the G20 agenda. And those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 11 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
In Melrose, we've got an accident on the Mark 1 North. It happened near Ethel Oaklands Road. Delays coming out of Glenhove Road. Please be on the lookout there. About a 15-minute hold up. And if you're traveling on the southerly direction of this route, more delays just as we approach the Corlett Drive exit coming out of Grayston Drive. Now, these delays are being caused by the roadworks that are taking place along this route. So please be on the lookout there. If you want to avoid this mess along the Mark 1 this morning, please try to use the N1 North instead through areas like Fourways as well as Rivonia. While traveling in Kelvin, we still have got those roadworks taking place on the N3 North. Delays between Vincent Chabalala Road and the Baklu interchange. There's also queuing traffic along the N12 as well as the R24 West between Edenville Road and the Glulies interchange. Please be on the lookout and continue driving with care. I'll have more updates for you at the top of the hour. Stay tuned.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
When South Africans talk about the country's progress, so much of it comes down to what happens on the ground, right? In towns, in the cities, the communities that they call home. So this week, all eyes are on a major gathering where the people shaping the progress come together under one roof. South Africa's local government sector is gathering for one of the most important assemblies of the year, the 2025 SALGA National Members Assembly, taking place at the Durban ICC from the 25th to the 27th of November. You can catch this show live from the National Members Assembly this Wednesday as we take you inside the conversations shaping the future of municipalities. This is where the country's municipal leaders come together to reflect, to debate and collaborate on the issues that define service delivery, from economic resilience to climate readiness, digital transformation to strengthening municipal finances. This is where the future of local government takes shape. Don't miss all the expert insights, the high-level discussions, and the real stories of progress and challenges facing South Africa's municipalities. The Clement Manyathela Show, live from the 2025 SALGA National Members Assembly this Wednesday on 702.
Team, summer is game time in Mzansi. Every tap, scan, swipe, it all adds up. And FNB is giving us big rewards, partner deals, e-bucks, defense tips, and chances to score experiences money can't buy. But you're only in the game if you pay with FNB. So stay sharp, spend clever, and let's dominate. Get in the game with FNB. Help changes everything. FNB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, Northrise FSP and credit provider. NCRCP 20. T's and C's, earn rules and limits apply.
Those trusty old shoes. There for your first move out of home. That marathon training that lasted a day. The quick runs to the store. The long nights out. Yeah, they've done the most for you. But with the Street Store, they can do even more for someone else. Visit thestreetstore.org to find out more about donating your pre-loved shoes and clothes to the world's first rent-free pop-up clothing store for the homeless. Donate before December 6, 2025.
702 was in conversation with Momentum on The Money Show with Stephen Grootes, discussing the power of focus and the science of success.
I think it's a test that most people would benefit from because, when I did the test, I kind of knew how, my relationship with money, but also it clearly stated that I wasn't scared of taking risks and making moves in business. But at the same time, I also had a real fear of kind of, I guess, running out of money or not being able to support my family. And that in the back of my head, whenever I do something, I guess the older you get, the less you're inclined to take risks. And I guess at the end of the day, what I learned from the test is, yes, I am a risk taker, but I'm also conservative and it's more calculated risks than just wild risks.
Visit momentum.co.za for more info. Momentum, your journey to success. Momentum is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider. 702.
The Clement Manyathela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
All right, 25 minutes now before 11 o'clock. We now continue with our series looking at South African wars. This is something we've been doing over the last couple of weeks where we take a moment for a bit of a history lesson. We have already looked at the First Boer War. That's how we started this series, with that first installment, looking at the First Boer War. And then we discussed the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. And then we spoke about the Second Anglo-Boer War. We looked at the Khoisan Dutch Wars. And today, I want us to take some time to discuss the Sekhukhune Wars. These were a series of conflicts that were fought between the Bapedi nation under King Sekhukhune, and there was the encroaching forces of the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, or the ZAR, or Transvaal Republic, and the British Empire back in the 1870s. And these wars were so critical. They were part of the Bapedi's resistance to European colonialism. So I want us to take some time to understand what these wars were about, what was the strategy, and what role did Kgoshi Sekhukhune play in those conflicts, in those wars. So our guest this morning, who's going to guide us through the conversation and take some of our questions, is Ntebe Molope, who is the author of King Mzilikazi Kamashobani. You're welcome to call us on 011-883-0702 if you've got questions, or maybe you've read a lot about the Sekhukhune War. Something has piqued your interest and you want to share it with us. You can send your WhatsApps as well on 072-702-1702. Ntebe, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Ntate. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you. Let's start with understanding who King Sekhukhune was, Sekhukhune the First, and what made his leadership so significant at that time.
I think one of the first things we need to do when we look at our royalties is that we must appreciate the fact that the rise to being kings was not straightforward. As you would see with Sekhukhune, for example, that there was contestation in terms of who must actually be in power. So Sekhukhune was the son of Sekwati and the grandson of Tulare. And the two people that he actually was a descendant of were also known to be formidable warriors in their own right. In fact, Tulare was said to have been in their praise singings. They say that he used to walk with an iron stick, referring to a gun, and they would say Tulare would say tu tu tu, which is a sound of actually almost onomatopic to how a gun actually is used. So yeah, that was Sekhukhune. That is the environment in which he actually had grown up, with his father having been one of the first people who was put up a resistance against the Dutch, the Boers, in 1838.
Okay, so and thank you so much for that context, because it does matter. It's clear that he ruled during intense colonial encroachment. How was he able to maintain his kingdom and prevent the invasion from the Boers?
The what was important is that he like us, talking back around this whole issue of contestation.
Ntebe, I think we've lost you there.
Already been saying that he had the potential.
Oh, sorry, Ntebe. Something happened there. Your line got cut off there. If you can just start from the beginning, please. We didn't hear the beginning part.
Okay, I was saying that the notion of this Adam and the people who are rightful inheritors of power comes in there. In that, and I want to just very quickly look at the other people who became great leaders in their own right.
Sure.
Who also were not necessarily the ones who were earmarked to be the ones who were supposed to take over power. You look at Ilembe Ushaga, says the same thing. You look at Mzilikazi, also same thing. You look at Sekhukhune, same thing. You look at the person that Sekhukhune, or rather Mampuru, ultimately got refugee from, Onyabela of the Ndebeles. They also had their kingdom had actually been split because of the same thing of contestation of power. So that is where he actually came from. But the whole issue is that Sekhukhune was certain that they must make up a fort that must resist the intrusion of the Boers, because when the Boers, what you must also remember about the Boers, long before they had the Anglo-Boer War, they had a fallout with the British in the Cape. And then they decided that they must move very far away from where the British were going to be. And when they were moving towards Natal, what was then Natal, they found that the British were already there. And therefore, they decided to go further up. And that's where they actually interacted and fought with Mzilikazi in 1838. So the Dutch actually had to lick their wounds twice. In 1838, they were defeated, pushed back by Sekwati, their father to Sekhukhune, and then later on they were had a pushback by Mzilikazi at Fescop in 1838. So yeah, that is the background basically around his rise to power.
What were some of the causes of tension between the Bapedi Kingdom and the Boers prior to the wars?
In my view, one of the things that the Boers had seen was that the Nguni groupings were not pushovers. Remember, there was a long, drawn-out battle that was fought in the eastern part of the Cape, coming from Cape Town itself and then pushing right up to going up to Natal. So there was a lot of resistance, and ironically, the British and the Boers came together to fight against the Khoi, the Xhosa, during all that drawn-out wars. And then when they got to Natal, they found that there was a lot of formidable fighters that pushed back against them. Now, my take is that they thought that amongst the Sotho Tswana people, that's where things will be much easier. They can be able to basically push them around. And that's where they were in for a big surprise. Because one of the first things they were not aware of is that from the times of Tulare, remember I said Tulare had a gun. Tulare, already because of his proximity of his capital to Mozambique, he had already been trading with the Portuguese, with the ivory and a number of other things, carrosses and so on, and getting guns from the Portuguese. And now we must put this in context of the 1852 Sand River Convention. Now, the Sand River Convention was signed between the British and the Boers. But some of the things that they were agreeing on was that one of the major things is that there must not be any guns in the hands of Africans. And now the problem that they had was that there were two people who had already started getting guns for themselves. One of them was Langali Balele, and Langali Balele was saying that he was keeping these guns as souvenirs, and something that he was just going to keep. And then on Sekhukhune side, he actually, after the diamonds were discovered in 1869, he sent Bapedi to go and work in the mines in Kimberley. And then some of the money that they were paying to him as a way of thanking him for getting them employment, he took that money and he was busy buying guns from the Portuguese. Now, the reason the Portuguese were agreeing to do something like that, to get the guns over, and also remember that even a person like Dingizwayo, one of the guns that he got, although he got it from Cohen, but there was also already an access that they could be able to get guns from the Portuguese. So the Portuguese saw themselves as not being a part of this whole notion of the British and the Boers. And if they could be able to help to push them back, they would. And that's why they were making guns available. And so he had a quite an arsenal of guns that he also then got his people to train in terms of using those guns. And that's why they found him to be so difficult to overcome. Because unlike where they got into other Sotho-Tswana areas, they found that there were no guns. In fact, at a much later stage, Botswana only got guns through Livingston, who was already in Botswana, and gave them, and that's how they were able to push back against Paul Kruger. So yeah, he became a hard nut to crack in that he knew how to fight, and then also he had the guns, which for a long time was only in the hands of either the Boers, the British, or the Griquas.
Ah, that's fascinating. It's going up to 13 minutes now before 11 o'clock. We're in conversation with Ntebe Molope, who is the author of King Mzilikazi Kamashobane. What questions do you have around the Sekhukhune Wars? Have you read about the wars? Have you watched a documentary even about Kgoshi Sekhukhune? What questions do you have? And what's piqued your interest? What do you want to share with us? Give us a call or send us a WhatsApp voice note.
Let's count backward. 5. Insurance. 4. Pineapple. 3. Insurance. 2. Pineapple. 1. You're under. Pineapple FSP 48650 is underwritten by Omart Insure Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP.
Get ready, South Africa. Mzansi Ballet proudly presents Sean Bovim's Private Presley the Ballet, a spectacular reimagining of the life and legend of Elvis Presley from his military days to his greatest loves. Experience the king of rock and roll's story told through breathtaking dance, starring international ballet sensation George Wade from Mexico as Elvis and South Africa's own prima ballerina Angela Revi as Priscilla. Beautiful singers Logan James and Patience Mahema bring some of his unforgettable songs to life. Don't miss this wonderful tribute on stage at Peter Torin Theatre, Monte Cassino on the 24th of October to the 30th of November. Book now at Web Tickets.
Hey, Chummy. Sorry I missed your call. I just got back from Dis-Chem where I was doing my Christmas shopping, spoiling the fam, when I spot these signs about better rewards. Turns out you can unlock special promo prices just by being a member. So obvious, I'm in. Long story short, I loaded my trolley with all the gifts and goodies and headed to the till. My slip, it just kept going and going. And my savings, I could literally see the difference. It's true. My till slip never looked better. You should better reward yourself too, hey? Okay, friend, bye.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
7:02.
11 minutes before 11 o'clock. We're having a conversation this morning about the Sekhukhune Wars, the series of conflicts fought between the Bapedi nation under King Sekhukhune I and the encroaching forces of the Transvaal Republic, so to speak, and the British Empire in the late 1870s. And our guest, Ntebe Molope, has taken through just the history and the context around King Sekhukhune I and how his leadership was significant at the time and how he was able to rise to power, especially considering that he was considered an illegitimate heir to Mapuru as the legitimate heir. I'm taking your calls, though, on 011-883-0702. Your WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702 if you want to join this conversation. Let's start with Pat, who's calling us from Sandton. Pat, good morning.
Lochan, Clement.
Hi, Lochan.
Sure. Just have a question around the names of the kings, right? He mentioned Tulari and Sekwati. And if you from KwaNdebele, you know this, that when young men come from the mountains, they get given those names. Sekwati, no Tulari. So I just want to understand what the link is between the Ndebele people and Bapedi. You know, because also, like, for example, when they praise themselves, you know, they use the Sepedi language. I just want to understand what happened, or what is the influence that the Bapedi people had over Ndebeles.
Well, thank you for that question, Ntebe. In fact, my uncle's name is Tulare, so I get your point very well. Ntebe?
Hi, yes, interesting question. In fact, one of the things that we have to be take cognizance of as African people is how our different cultures have over time been brushing off and influencing the other cultures. For example, in Chate, if you go to Chate today, they will tell you that there were two groups of people, of tribes or of nations that had influenced Bapedi, Marota. It is Bakatla and then Ndebeles. Bakatla, because the Bapedi will tell you that they are an offshoot of Bakatla. Because when Bakatla broke off, one of the groups of Bakatla was Bakatla ba Makau. And those Bakatla ba Makau are the ones from whom Bapedi then broke off. And from the time that they had broken off, actually they had even been having a totem, a Kabo as a totem. And which is quite interesting that if you go amongst Bapedi, the name Kabo is still very prominent amongst them. Now, it was only after that, when they had now started settling, that they then took up a porcupine to be their totem. But then the first Ndebeles, long before Mzilikazi came through, who influenced Bapedi, were the Ndebeles who were those that are coming out of the Ndebeles of Mfana, of Ndebele himself, and so on, who had actually come from the area of what is now referred to as Ladysmith, Mnambiti. So they came down, and the first people that they interacted with was Bapedi. That is why, if you look at the Pedi language, there's a lot of words that have got Ndebele influence, like Kuchada, like Matolo, and there's many other words, even Oshabelela. When I was growing up, we used to use a Sepedi hymn book. And that's where I would see a lot of words that these words did not really sound Pedi, but they have actually been incorporated into the Pedi language. So yes, there is that level of influence. So by the time Mzilikazi came and shook off Sekwati's children, they had long been made some sort of a collaboration and working together with Amandebele, and that's why there's that cultural mix.
So the first Sekhukhune War resulted in a major Boer defeat at Thaba Masera. What contributed to their military strength, their strategy as well, just the strategy of the Bapedi kingdom? And I'm also wanting to understand, because before 1877, Britain had a somewhat sympathetic view of Sekhukhune's independence. So what really changed after the British annexation of the Transvaal?
Okay, first around the Boers. What is interesting around that war, which was then put up by a man who was known as Beggars, and who also then put up a fort there next to Sekhukhune's royal place, and which was then got to be known as Beggars Fort. Now, when Beggars, who had been the president of Transvaal, decided to go and pick up a fight against Sekhukhune, because for them, for the Boers, by and large, they had, and they were looking at African children as being apprentices, which is basically a very sophisticated or a nice way of calling a slave, because they were taking young children and they were getting them to be working for no pay and under very odious conditions. Now, when they wanted to go and take over that part of the land, the interesting thing is that Kruger warned beggars, and he said, don't go and fight against those people, because he first warned them against picking up a fight against the Zulus. And so when he was being warned against Bapedi, he thought that no, but he will that will be just a Sunday walk. And so when they got against Bapedi, that's where they were pleasantly surprised. They found that they were well armed, they had a fort, and they had a strategy of being right at the hilltop, rolling stones where necessary, and then belching guns and so on. And so Beggars got so embarrassed to a point that after his defeat there, when he came back into the Transvaal, that's how Kruger got to be a president. So, I mean, to an extent, Kruger can thank Bapedi for having made his rise to power easier by virtue of the fact that his predecessor fell on his sword.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. What role did the Swazi allies play? Just quickly before we wrap up, the Swazi allies in the eventual British victory.
They were, this is what is also interesting amongst both the British and the Boers, in that they would fight a war, but they will have the majority of people who are actually fighting there on their behalf being not themselves, but being other people. I mean, we had seen this when the Boers went to attack Mzilikazi at Musecha, that they had the majority of people who were there fighting were the Griquas. And then they also supplemented with Barolong. Now, in the same instance here with the British, because you see, this British had also this whole mentality of being higher than anybody else, and because they had seen that they had been able to push around the Boers, and which had already succumbed, and they thought that they will then also have an easy way. I mean, they first started the soft way by making peace with Bapedi in 1877. And then later then started to say they must pay tax in the form of cattle, thousands of cattle that they required. And Sekhukhune was not going to have that. And so he put up a fight against them. And so in that way, they realized that the people who knew the terrain well were the Swatis, who were not very far from there. And so they got them in numbers, and they had them to go and fight there. And one of the other things which we must also not forget is that there was Merensky, the missionary. And Merensky was also used tactically by these guys, because he came there to come as a person who was bringing the word of God, but at the same time, he was actually giving intelligence, because he had also, like many of the other missionaries, I mean, I'm busy going through some book by Luca Janchi, who talks about how the missionaries actually divided Batlaping in the area where ultimately the British took up the diamond, in an area which then later got to be called Kimberley and so on. It was the same thing that they did. They divided the royal family. Some people decided to convert, others decided not to convert. Those that converted, would then be taken to schools, got clinics, and so on. But then they will get some sort of support in case of enemy attacking. And so Merensky did the same thing. And what Merensky did is he took one of Sekhukhune's wives and converted her. I mean, you can imagine, how, what amount of emotions will then rise when you are now splitting a family like that. And so that's how Sekhukhune and them decided to attack Botshabelo, that they cannot just look at it as an ordinary place. It's actually some sort of a covert support for the Boers and the
Yeah, sure. Ntebe Molope, thank you so much for speaking to us. So insightful. what you're sharing with us about the Sekhukhune Wars. He's the author of King Mzilikazi Kamashobani. Go get yourself some books that tell these stories. As you know, I mean, we're unable to get through everything. Ultimately Sekhukhune got captured, in the caves, and you can read more about what happened afterward. The involvement of his half-brother Mampuru and why he had to act in the manner that he did. There's so much history. And this is a little bit of our part through this series to just introduce some elements that may be of interest to you.
Tip your way to glory in the Hollywood Bets Punters Challenge, the free-to-play horse racing game with daily cash giveaways and massive jackpot prizes. Pick all the winners on the race card and you could win 100,000 Rand. Bet 50 Rand or more on your selections using the Bet Slip feature and you could walk away with 1 million Rand. Visit punterschallenge.hollywoodbets.net today and tip your way to the top. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, unfair blacklisting, or an uncontested divorce, Clientele Legal offers professional legal services to all South Africans. Our plans are affordable, and you receive up to 745,000 Rand worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our nationwide legal teams are standing by to support you 24 hours a day. Plus, all plans include a 5,000 Rand bail benefit. Join today. SMS LEGAL to 48721. That's legal to 48721. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. One body has been recovered from a river in KwaZulu-Natal as the search for two more missing people continues. The victims were washed away yesterday during floods in New Hanover in the Midlands. KwaZulu-Natal has been hit by heavy downpours with an orange level 6 alert, with severe thunderstorms causing localized flooding. KZN Cooperative Governance Department spokesperson Senzelwe Mzila says rescue crews found the body this morning.
Disaster management teams are currently on scene in Injisuti River in the Ward 2 of the Umshwathi local municipality, New Hanover. Currently, the teams are working to recover one body, that of a female, that is entrapped in the river. The MEC for Kokta, Reverend Tlasizi Buthelezi, has assured residents that disaster management teams will work right throughout the clock to ensure that those that are missing are recovered.
Social development officials in George have received a tongue lashing from members of parliament for the way they handled the deadly building collapse. The Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure travelled to the Southern Cape Town to conduct hearings with families of victims. Many who turned up say the Social Development Department failed to give them the support they needed. It's been 18 months since 34 construction workers died on duty while the structure they were working on collapsed and caved in on them. Zulfa Khan reports.
Many who opted to speak told MPs there's been a lack of assistance from government departments after the tragedy in May 2024, especially from the Social Development Department. Sibusiso Nkobese, like many others, spoke on behalf of the bereaved families.
The day that building collapsed there, yes, social development was there, helping people. But after, social development was not there. They were there with only phone call to hear how people coping.
MPs pressed social development officials for answers, but the committee was not impressed. Eventually, EFF MP Molebocheng Letlape resorted to apologizing to the families and victims gathered.
I want, on behalf of the chair, to apologize for the treatment that you got from social development. You did not deserve it.
DSD officials told the committee they have done all that they're mandated to do. Zulfa Khan, Eyewitness News.
Alleged underworld gang boss Nafees Modak will continue with cross-examination in the Western Cape High Court today. Last week, Modak turned his back on co-accused Zane Dangor, claiming he was part of a conspiracy against him involving his alleged underworld rivals, the now deceased Mark Liffman and Andre Naudé. Dangor previously told the Western Cape High Court that Modak instructed him to track the whereabouts of prominent attorney William Booth before an attempt on the lawyer's life 5 years ago. Carlo Peterson reports.
Last week, Nafees Modak accused Zane Dangor of lying under oath, saying he never instructed Dangor to ping attorney William Booth. Evidence shows Dangor pinged Booth several times before the attorney survived a shooting at his Iggovale home in April 2020. State Prosecutor Greg Vormerans questioned Modak about why Dangor would lie about pinging Booth on Modak's instruction. Modak told the court Dangor was doing the same investigative work for his alleged underworld rivals, the now deceased Mark Liffman and Andre Naudé. He insists the charges he faces are part of a conspiracy by his alleged underworld rivals and corrupt cops. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News.
And while French President Emmanuel Macron has questioned the value and longevity of the Group of 20, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he hopes the review of the collective conducted under South Africa's presidency will serve as a helpful guide to ensure the G20 remains fit for purpose in an ever-changing world. Closing the two-day Leaders Summit in Johannesburg yesterday, Ramaphosa said the review should continue into next year. South Africa has used its presidency to place the priorities of Africa and the Global South at the heart of the G20 agenda. Lindsay Dentlinker reports.
Following on from the presidencies of Indonesia, India and Brazil, the 2025 G20 prioritized the issues that matter most to the developing economies. While incoming G20 President Donald Trump has indicated that under his leadership, the bloc will return to its core mandate of attending to economic issues, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the declaration reached at the start of the summit commits to improving the lives of people across the world.
We have laid the foundation of solidarity. Now we must build the walls of justice and the roof of prosperity.
The summit has mobilized financing for a just energy transition, commitments to respond to the effects of disaster and climate change, and ensuring that critical minerals drive prosperity. Ramaphosa said G20 leaders had the responsibility to accelerate progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and the Pact for the Future. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Nasrec.
Gold is trading at $4,105.70 an ounce. The rand is at 17.35 to the dollar, 22.74 to the pound, 20 rand 01 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $62.58 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we've got delays on the M1 North. This is between Hudson Drive and Athol Oaklands Road due to that accident there. Please be on the lookout. It's in the Melrose area causing delays. There's also queuing traffic in Calvin on the N3 North between Marlborough Drive and the Buccleuch interchange due to roadworks.
A cloudy day in store for Gauteng, along with showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 24 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. One body has been recovered from a river in KwaZulu-Natal as the search for two more missing people continues.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7 and 106 FM.
9 minutes after 11 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the third and final hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thanks for staying with us here on 702. Time for our Family Matters feature.
702.
Family Matters.
So, on our Family Matters feature this morning, we are talking about the lack of emotional availability and vulnerability in families. Are you from a family that embraces emotions? A family that embraces vulnerability? Does your family struggle with having emotional conversations? And do you think that your feelings have or have always had a safe space in your home? Because families are meant to be our first place of comfort, right? The people who see us, who understand us, help us grow emotionally. But in many homes, especially in fast-paced and high-stress environments, emotional unavailability has silently become the norm. And that's quite sad, because there are families or family members that struggle to express their feelings. And that can often lead to a lot of things not being addressed, which eventually start causing problems, even for the family itself. When family members struggle to express feelings or support one another or create a safe space for vulnerability, that can lead to problems with how even the children growing up in that family attach. Their attachment styles may be defined by that. So instead of open conversations, maybe you're from a family that relied a lot on silence or still relies on silence, on avoidance. Or anger to communicate. But make no mistake, emotional unavailability may look different inside different families, but it really shapes relationships between parents, between partners and children. And that's why it's important that we should have a conversation about emotional vulnerability in families and how to cultivate that as well. Because there are some important conversations that I know some of you want to have with some members of your family, but you can't because the environment has never been conducive for that. So how do you navigate emotions in your family? How have you navigated them in the past? Are you from a family that's very expressive, or you still hide things under the carpet? 011-883-0702 is the number to dial. WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. You can share your experiences with us. Nkateko Ndala Mahoro is a counseling psychologist who's going to guide us through this conversation. Thank you for making time for us. Nkateko, welcome back to the show. Good morning.
Thank you, Clement, and good morning to the 702 listeners. Thank you for having me.
I want us to start by understanding what we mean by emotional unavailability and how does it develop in individuals and then spread into family systems.
Sure. When we talk about emotional unavailability, and that is why we need to differentiate between emotional and physical. Oftentimes, parents are available physically or they give in to the needs of the child, and they think that that availability is enough. But there is an emotional availability where the nurturing happens, where we openly speak, we do things together, we check in with each other. We don't all go into our rooms or just cook and do the functional day-to-day things of life. And that is needed. Both the physical and the emotional are needed to form security in us as families. And when you speak about how it can spread out, modeling is very important, Clement. What we see as children, we tend to do. So if what is modeled between mom and dad, or how we do relationships, the adults in the household, us as children are also likely to do the same. So when maybe, let's say, daddy's coming back from work and he goes straight to the room, shuts the door, does not want to be bothered, doom scrolls, or picks up a book or a newspaper or switch on the TV, does not engage with anybody else, we should not be surprised when those children become a little bit older, in their early teens into their teen do the same, closing in themselves, everybody in their room and nobody engaging, where when we are emotionally available for...
Yeah. Oh, did we just lose Nkateko there? Can we try and see if we can re-establish that line? I don't know what happened there, but we'll try get that line right and come back to this conversation. It's 14 minutes after 11.
Bongani Bingwa, 702 Breakfast.
Weekday mornings, 6 to 9.
How well did South Africa do, not only, I suppose, this past weekend, but indeed throughout its year of its G20 presidency?
Well, South Africa has done very well, Bongani, taking it from the Brazilian presidency, the social summit, really bring to the fore a lot of groups that have big interests. What I think it should have been done also was to lift up the Gen Z with a new phenomenon in world politics, to have a say in this kind of forum.
Dr. Kingsley Makubela.
Bongani Bingwa, 6 to 9.
On 702.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS Legal to 48721. That's legal to 48721. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Hey, no longer feeling like the man you used to be? The man who's the life of the party even when he doesn't attend.
The fact is, 95% of men with low testosterone go untreated.
Vitamin High Performance Supplements for men helps recharge energy, regain lean muscle, and reload performance. Available at all good pharmacies and Vitalamin.co.za.
Vitalamin. Don't get older.
Get better.
Let's count backward. 5. Insurance. 4. Pineapple. 3. Insurance. 2. Pineapple. 1. You're under. Pineapple FSP 48650 is underwritten by Omart Insure Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP.
From service delivery innovation to the future of local governance, the 2025 SALGA National Members Assembly is here, happening at the Durban ICC on the 25th to the 27th of November. You can catch this show live from the Assembly this Wednesday as we take you inside one of the most important gatherings in South Africa's local government calendar. Hear from policymakers, experts and practitioners driving meaningful change on the ground. Brought to you by the South African Local Government Association, inspiring service delivery on 702.
702.
Family Matters.
All right, we've managed to re-establish that line with our guest, Nkateko Ndala-Magoro, who's a counseling psychologist. Yeah, Nkateko, apologies there for that glitch. If you can just continue the point you were making, please.
Yes, I'm not sure how far I was, but I was explaining a scenario where a parent will come into the household, not engage, and obviously the children will then follow suit in how the pattern or taking on the pattern of the household. But when the parent come in, instead of locking themselves in the room, they come into the communal space, maybe engage in game, engage in conversation. How was your day? Cooking together, chop onions for me here. Let's put your socks here. There is still the practical element, but we are also teaching, we are also involved, we are connected emotionally and not disconnecting.
And I mean, part of, suppose when you look at how we even do things these days is we no longer even eat together as families, some families, which was a moment where, you allow for people to also be honest about how their day was. So it's the simple things like that. And I wonder, is it not difficult to cultivate environments like that where there's a discussion in the family or there's vulnerability that is encouraged? Is it not difficult to create those environments when there are individuals themselves that are just, have avoidable, avoidance personalities, or they don't like getting into the issues? Because it's one thing to say, okay, let's sit down, let's create and cultivate an environment where we can talk as families. But if one of the family members is unresponsive, wants to avoid issues, doesn't that then complicate things?
Definitely does, but we cannot also talk about it as if it's something that can be unlearned and relearned. As human beings, we are malleable. Our behavior can change. That's if we have the will to do so. With talks like this, with listeners listening into the conversation, they can already, this is not to say you have been doing things bad, but to say if you know better, you can do better. So if you realize that, oh, I do have a avoidance style of dealing with things, and yet my family is complaining, they feel that I don't love them, and I know I love them very much. How else can I demonstrate? We can then learn to engage, and it does not need to be an overexposure. Here, I'm not talking about a 30 minutes conversation, an hour conversation. I'm talking about a 5 minutes check-in, a 7 minutes check-in, a drive, from home from work to home, picking up the kids from school, instead of all the time putting on music or a podcast or chatting on the phone while driving. You just do an exercise of let's spot all the yellow cars, let's spot all the sports cars. Now you get to learn, oh, okay, my children don't know what is a sports car. Now you have a conversation, you have a lesson, you connect. It's twofold, it's practical, it's also emotional.
Yeah. What attachment styles are commonly seen in individuals where vulnerability, who are coming from families where vulnerability is limited or it's discouraged? Because as you say, this is learned behavior. When you see your elders, your guardians, your parents behaving like that, somehow, there's some elements of that you take into your adulthood, and that begins to shape even the relationships you have.
Definitely. You asking about attachment style. I'm actually interested in this work. I mean, it's theory. It's heavy laden with theory. Sometimes we use it loosely to say attachment style. It needs to be diagnosed or really defined within assessing deeply. So I am saying this to qualify the fact that just because I'm going to be highlighting them, it's not for people to be diagnosing themselves or putting themselves in boxes and categories and say, oh, I'm of this attachment style or that. No, have a discussion with somebody who's a professional to be able to identify that and to also say, what does it mean? To come into your question, we see it in people who have insecure attachment styles and avoidant attachment style, and somewhat also a hint of anxious attachment style. And by this, what we mean is, especially with the avoidant, where a highly dismissive and disregard for what are the children's need or what are the people's within my family, within my circle, what are they needing, and not having both the physical and the emotional. We can also talk about it in the insecure attachment style. So trauma will be one of the things that motivate us to be in the insecure or avoidant or even the anxious attachment style. The one where we want to get at, obviously, is the secure attachment style. That's where both the physical, or the emotional and the physical are exhibited in the family system. But so, as I said, it's a maybe a more simplified way of highlighting a heavy laden theoretical process of thinking about attaching. So the more people feel that they are not safe in a relationship, the more they will be avoidant. The more there is inconsistencies in how the parents show up, the more they will have anxious attachment styles. So let me give a practical example. A person will have an anxious attachment style because when they were trying to express themselves, they were shut down. I was speaking about boundaries yesterday at our church, having a boundary talk. And one of the things that I said is, how are boundaries formed? It's only within bonding, when we are well bonded, that we are able to have healthy boundaries. But where self-expression was discouraged, it was dismissed, you were only seen and not heard, that's when people then start to show up in relationships in the maladaptive attachment styles.
Yeah. So, and I want us to try be as practical as possible, because I think, well, we are dealing with something here that affects a lot of us. And I think one thing that I've picked up, Gateko, is that even with families that don't want to address certain issues, they've often been forced lately to address those issues. There are people who are dealing with trauma. The advent of therapy, it's really been a blessing, because there are people who have not understood why they behave in a particular way, or the kind of personality that they have, or attachment styles they have, until they started doing some therapy work, and they realized that you were violated when you were a child, and you tried to talk to your mother about it, or your father about it, or your grandmother about it, and they just were not interested. In fact, they told you to shut up because you're going to cause issues. And these are families that didn't allow for a conversation like that, or you were just dismissed when you wanted to talk about something that happened to you, done to you by a family pastor or a family favorite uncle, and you were told to shut up. And I think lately people are getting more and more the courage to speak out about their childhood traumas. And a lot of that is rooted on things that have not been addressed. I mean, to this day, some of us live in families, sure, people listening to us, some of them are living in families where there are recurring issues. You know that our dad has another family outside of this family. Or you know that you're actually dad's second family. There's one that is never spoken about. So suppose what I'm asking is, what's your advice for someone who's in that situation, who is, as we speak now, is facing a situation where there's something that is affecting the family heavily, but it's not being spoken about. And nobody has said we can't talk about it, but it's an unwritten rule that this is not a matter you speak about. Whether it's a violation that happened when you were 3, when you were 10, or it's what the father is doing, or it's what the mom has done. How do you begin a conversation like that in an environment that has not been conducive for as long as you remember?
Yeah. Clement, I will say to the listeners, firstly, evaluate the motivation behind why you want to bring up the conversation. If bringing up the conversation is to cause chaos, is to cause trauma, is to destabilize, is to pinpoint, is to blame, then we need to reevaluate why we want to have the conversation. If the conversation is coming from, I want to start to heal, I want to self-express, I want to be heard, then we can start the conversation, because it's starting from a healthy place. So what I'm advocating is that the conversation itself needs to start from a healthy place, because if it starts from an unhealthy place, we are in for trouble. You are now starting another set of trauma and chaos, because the people that you are addressing or confronting, they will become defensive. You will feel hurt. You will, then it becomes vicious. And if you see that the system that you want to talk to, it's not ready for the conversation that you are going to have, rather have the conversation indirectly. What does that mean? It's not meaning that you keep the stuff hush, you still put things under the carpet and things are not spoken, the skeletons are hiding in the cupboards, but it's to look at the system and evaluate, this system is not ready. I'm actually going to be more wounded speaking than rather speak in a safe environment, such as with a friend, with a therapist, to help you through the impact of what the unspoken things, the trauma, the hurt, if it was abuse, if it is another family, and until such a place where you feel safe enough that even if you are met with resistance, you are met with blame, you are met with defenses, you are fine internally to handle what is going to come your way.
Yeah. Let's prepare now for some WhatsApp voice notes and calls. I would like you to share your experience with us, listening to us now in your car, at home, in the office, wherever you're listening from. You know about how your family is currently dealing with issues or has dealt with issues, even when you were growing up. How did you navigate that? What was your experience? Are you coming from a family that has really been bold enough to express themselves? And how did that affect the adult that you are today? Are you coming from a family that was not expressive, a family that lacked emotional availability, that lacked vulnerability? And how did that affect you as an adult? Please give us a call on 011-883-0702 to share your experiences with us. The WhatsApp line is 072-7021-702. What are those conversations that are also like non-negotiables? Huh? You know, there are some people who know that their fathers or their mothers have children that are older than them. Or they have, their parents have other kids that have never been introduced to them, but they can't ask because you can't have conversations like that. What are those conversations for you, and how have you navigated that? It's 11:30. Bali, good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. Search operations for 2 people washed away by floods in KwaZulu-Natal are continuing this morning after one body was recovered earlier. It comes as an alert for severe weather remains in place for the province. KwaZulu-Natal has been hit by heavy rain with severe thunderstorms causing localized flooding. A Hawks officer and a Tembisa Hospital employee are expected to appear in the Pretoria Magistrates Court today facing charges of corruption. They were arrested yesterday for allegedly offering money to an investigating officer to quash a case against the hospital employee. And there are calls for the formation of a special task team to deal with the aftermath of the George building collapse. Families of victims and survivors of the May 2024 tragedy shared their struggles with processing claims at a public hearing last week. Parliament's Public Works and Infrastructure Portfolio Committee travelled to George to get a first-hand report from claimants as well as government officials. Those are the headlines this EWN and more at midday or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
This EWN Traffic is brought to you by cars.co.za. Let's find what moves you. Amo?
Well, Clement, we've got an accident reported on the N1 North heading towards Midrand. It's right near New Road. It's causing delays coming out of Allendale Road. There's also queuing traffic on the southerly direction of this route due to onlookers as you approach Allendale Road. While traveling in Calvin, we still have got those roadworks causing delays between Marlborough Drive and the Baklu interchange. Also queuing traffic just as you approach Vincent Chabalala Road in the southerly direction of the N3 due to the roadworks. While on the N12 as well as the R24 West, some delays between Edenville Road and the Gludi's interchange. There's also queuing traffic along Main Reef Road just as you approach the M2 exit. More updates coming up at the top of the hour with Karabo Jali. Otherwise, that was your last EWN traffic update from me, Mo Ramela. Stay tuned.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Hey, Jim, what's wrong? Hi, Bob. I'm just so confused. I'm trying to buy a car and I don't know where to stop. Well, have you tried to...
Cars.coza.
have you tried to...
Cars.coza.
Sorry, we're trying to do an advert.
Whatever car you want to buy or sell, cut through the and just go to cars.coza and let's find what moves you. Cars.coza.
After more than 50 sold-out shows, Universe on Stage duo is back with their new show, The Black Hole Symphony, performed live with the Johannesburg Philharmonic Orchestra and conducted by Daniel Boyko. This breathtaking, one-of-a-kind exploration of music, science, and cinematic visuals is a symphonic journey through one of nature's greatest enigmas, the black hole. It takes place for 3 performances only from the 27th to the 29th of November at the Wits Linda Auditorium. Tickets available on web tickets.
Who says everyday driving can't be très chic? Rent premium with Sani Sixt now. Own the stylish Citroen C3 later. Yes, that's 3 cars, 3 months, 3 chances to say ooh la la. Just book directly on sani.co.za Call us or rent at any branch between 1 November and 31 January, and you're automatically entered into the draw. Bon voyage with Sani Sixt and Win. T's and C's apply.
You are not dreaming. You are repeating. Insurance, pineapple. Insurance, pineapple. Insurance, pineapple. Insurance, pineapple. Pineapple FSP 48650 is underwritten by Omart Insure Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP.
702.
Family Matters.
25 minutes before 12 o'clock, we're having quite an important conversation this morning on our Family Matters feature about something that's really become the norm in a lot of families, right? The lack of vulnerability. We have been raised, some of us, by parents who were not encouraged to speak out, to express themselves, to express their feelings. And therefore, when they were raising us, they literally did as they were raised. And I think we have a lot of opportunities, just like many opportunities existed before other elders before us, opportunities to redefine how we do this family thing, opportunities to create conducive environment, to allow our children, to allow every single family member to be able to express themselves. And sometimes we don't pay too much attention to that. We are okay with just, having dinners separately. We are okay with the whole week concludes before we've even asked each other how we're doing. We're okay with just being on our phones all the time, during dinner, when we are traveling. But there, we miss an opportunity to just do an easy check-in. So I'm asking you this morning, how expressive are you and your family members? Are you honest about how you feel? Can you talk about anything? When you grew up, how was your family set up? Did you grow up in a family where there was emotional availability and it was encouraged? You were encouraged to be vulnerable. 011-883-0702. That's the number to call. Jabu has called us from Kwaggafontein to share his thoughts with us. Jabu, thank you for making time. Good morning.
Morning, sir. How's it?
I'm all right, man. Go ahead.
Good, man. I think I grew up from the family of a lot of sisters. I think we're 8 siblings, and I'm one of the guys there. And grow up in a situation where you don't really have an opportunity to speak. When you're a boy, you're being dismissed and all those things. Fast forward, when my dad passed on, and I'm a bit grown now, and I have to deal with a lot of family matters, and I see how sometimes I get ignored, and obviously they themselves get to have their relationship, have their own relationship with other men, and you ask, how do you keep things together? I was the only guy in the family, so quite a touching for me.
Oh, sorry, Jabu, your line was breaking there a little bit. Are you saying that with the 8 siblings you had, that affected how you express yourself? So you still struggle with that because you were ignored a lot?
Yeah, I struggled a lot, and obviously it was okay at the time because my dad was there. But now that my dad has passed on a couple of years back, I've had to deal with a lot of things, and you realize that how you still get ignored, even though you have to take care of certain business of the family. So you just feel disappointed. Also, you feel like you're letting your parents down, as the man in the family, so. Yeah.
No, got you. Jabu in Kwaggafontein, thank you so much for that. And I wonder, did you grow up in a family with like lots of children? Yeah? And did you feel invisible, so to speak? I'm trying to understand how, dynamics like that end up affecting the whole family. Like when a lot of us, have parents who had like 13, 15 siblings. How did you navigate an environment like that, and how did it suppress or support or even encourage your emotional availability and vulnerability? Zoo on the WhatsApp line says, "Hey Clement, my parents repeatedly said that I could speak to them about anything, but I recall one incident when I did that, and then they told me I was being disrespectful. To this day, 30 years later, I've never again been able to speak to my parents about anything, even things that are seemingly trivial." Yeah, Gateko, I suppose when sometimes parents say to you, okay, my children, you can talk to us about anything. You can raise anything. Sometimes they don't really mean everything, because as Zoo says in this message, certain things are like red zones you're not allowed to cross. And that has happened a lot, right? On our last healing hour, in fact, we were talking about how when you, as a children, when you were being affected or you noticing cheating that happens between your parents, you were not allowed to raise that, because that's a matter that involved the elders. Why are you getting yourself mixed up in issues of the elders? But as a child, if you want to just express how it makes you feel, you are not allowed to even do that. And that was the experience shared by a lot of listeners. So there's that dynamic as well.
That's being disingenuous. I mean, you can't say to a child or make an invitation to somebody that you can speak to me about anything, and then count whatever they're saying. I mean, obviously, I don't have context unless the manner in which it was said. That is a different topic altogether. To say it was disrespectful, but to say what you are saying is disrespectful while we have made an invitation that you can speak to us about anything, that's disingenuous. And I want to go back to Jabu as well, Clement from Kwahafontein. I think what is playing out there was gender stereotype from the sisters, because he says, not only citing the fact that there were many, but to say, I grew up with sisters and they took center stage in terms of the voices and speaking. And we can often make a mistake to say people who speak a lot or who have words. I was with a couple and the man says, I am not expressive. But guess what? Guess who took over in the session? It was the guy. But that's because society has not given platform, has not given a voice for our male counterparts to express themselves emotionally. Yes, they can be decision makers, they can be leaders, they can, be go-getters and all of that. But we think that when it comes to emotions, we ourselves become uncomfortable when they bring emotional issues, and we feel like we're supposed to package them and make them shush. But so it's the space that we create or not create that will encourage our male counterparts expressing emotions.
Yeah. And then another message here says, "Hi Clement, it's really a problem, this issue you're discussing, when one cannot communicate with the family. That is why abuse will still continue and thrive. We grew up in a family like that, hence the sexual abuse that happened to me and my twin sister. But my stepmother saw it and she helped. She was our saving grace out of that." Oh, that's good to know, and I'm sorry about that, what you guys have been through. And I'm just thinking here in Kateko, there are so many people out there who have faced sexual assault, and this is one of the issues that should never be spoken about in some families, because you're seen as if you are causing trouble, especially now, because the thing is, it may have happened 22 years ago, it may have happened 30 years ago, it may have happened 10 years ago. But as the victim, you are the person carrying the pain. And until you have spoken about it, and sometimes until you get at least someone in the family to hear you, you're not going to actually have peace. And now the struggle is, when you try to raise it or to even ask questions, you are seen as if, why do you want to bring trouble about something that happened so long ago? Because look at you now. You're working, Mos. You are married now. You've got your own family. What more do you want? Why do you want to cause trouble? So there are people out there listening now who are carrying so much pain, so much confusion, but they can't let that out because they've got to move on. Because why would you want to cause trouble and raise an issue like that? How do you help? What do you say to families that are still sort of taking that posture of let it go. It's been long. We're all happy. You've moved on. You're successful now. But they actually don't know the pain that you're carrying.
Yeah. And that's exactly that. They don't know the pain, and that's why it's easy for them to say, let it go. It's all in the past, you're causing trouble. I am taking a little bit of an issue with not finding peace because you have not spoken out. I think there are ways in which we can find peace, even though we have not spoken out in that environment. Reason I'm saying that it's family dynamics are different from one family to another. Other families, they are so dysfunctional that they will make the same vulnerability and weaponize that vulnerability. And I think I said it earlier on, where you end up being hurt more than healed. Yes, it should be spoken about, it should be expressed, but we need to also assess who are we saying it to, how are we saying it. For example, writing a letter, addressing it to the person that you want to address, it can be enough for you to release it, to forgive, to find peace. And not to say that it would have not have been nice to say it to my mom, about this sexual abuse, you kept quiet, about this uncle that did this. It would have been more satisfying, but there is a way in which you can still find peace, you can still find healing outside of expressing it to that individual that you want them to hear. Why? Because you know their behavior, you know that it does not matter what you say and how you say it. In the nicest of things, you can even take them to Paris on a cruise and say it in those kind of an environment. They will still hear an attack. They will still hear you blaming them. They will still hear you. They will still feel like you don't want to let things go, only to find that actually for you to express is your beginning of wanting to let things go.
Yeah. Here's a WhatsApp voice notes that come through.
Look, Clement, me, I'm the same guy. I have 5 sisters, being the older brother. You just have to grow up, and obviously, I've never expressed myself. They were the ones who were always recognized. Even right now, I have my own family now. And when they call me because they are in trouble. Even our voices are not heard, even in our home, my voice actually. So the older parents, you can never teach them how to parent. Even when I raise issues that are of truth to my mom and dad, they send their telela. So when I'm called, my sisters, when they are in trouble, I just tell my wife to tell them, I'm busy. That's what I do. Let me be anonymous.
Sure. Yeah, and Kateko, that's it.
So I think,
some people
yeah,
have
the
now
caller is
resort to that.
managing. Yes, they are managing because they know how the family works. Yes, it's not to say that in their own lives, in other pockets of relationships, like their romantic relationship, their collegial relationship, they cannot be self-expressive, but they know that in this particular environment, this is where it ends. And I can never change the person. What do I need to do? I change myself. I resort to making excuses about resolving, when they're calling me to come and resolve issues, because I know I'm not going to be listened to.
There's another WhatsApp voice notes that come through, but before we get to it, a text here says, Clement, vulnerability has always been encouraged and supported. My parents are big on speaking about emotions. This has helped me a lot throughout my childhood, and it helped my parents identify issues quickly as well. I raise my children similarly as well.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, Clement. Sometimes families will say that we can talk about anything, or you should do this, you should open up about issues. And my experience was that when I got together with my wife, we experienced some problems, which I kept inside. I kept them in my house between me and my wife. And I didn't notify anyone. And eventually it led to us breaking up. Fast forward 7 years later, we got back together. And when we experienced problems, this time I chose to do things differently. I called her family in, I called my family in, I aired my issues so that we could get help. And they said to me, hey, you know what, guys, you don't air your dirty laundry, and you guys should work your problems out. So sometimes it's just said so that people can seem accommodative, and when it comes time to accommodate, then maybe it becomes bigger than them. I'm not sure. Shivers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that is sometimes the reality. Why are you airing your dirty laundry out there? There's a question here, Ngateko, about, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier on. What happens when there's one member of the family who is not willing to do the emotional work, and is resistant, but the others are willing to do it? So do you start conversations and do this work as a group that is committed and leave out the other person? How do you get everybody to just have the buy-in of this, even those that are resistant or are avoidant?
Yeah. So you communicate that to say, this is what we have noticed, this is what we want to talk about, and then you let them act or react however way, and then you regularly check in with them. Maybe we went to a therapist, or we went to a mediator, or we had dinner together and we spoke about this, or we are going out for dinner and we want to speak about this. So you put what is going to be on the agenda. You also don't ambush a person, because sometimes things like that can be disguised as we are going out for dinner, only to find that we want to now hustle at the other person. We want to put them in a corner about their behavior. So you put on the agenda to say, we're going out ice skating, whatever the case might be, and during the break we are going to be speaking about this. Are you interested in coming? And then you consistently do that. But what is key as well is not the hope that you can change the other person. It's in you changing the other people that are concerned, that are growing, that are maybe adopting healthier communication styles and expression. And once the other family members now start to feel isolated, they start to feel alienated, they start to feel like they are no longer part, they might start to adjust their behavior as well, especially if the sense of belonging is important to them. If the sense of belonging is not important to them, they will still act the same way. And that should also tell you where they are in terms of being part of the family.
Yeah. Another one says, hi, Clement. In my home, we are radically expressive. My children and I speak our truths without fear. If I love them, I say it freely, fiercely, and often. If I'm angry, I name it. If I'm disappointed, I don't hide it. And yes, I feel hate in a moment of deep hurt or frustration. I say that too, because I trust them to know that feelings are fluid, not fixed. We don't bottle things up. We cry, we laugh, we shout, we apologize, we swear sometimes, we hug often, we let each other feel everything, because that's how we stay real with one another. And this wasn't how I was raised. I grew up in a family where emotions were swallowed, where silence was safer than the truth, but I couldn't keep quiet. I called out my father when he cheated. I confronted my mother when she did the same. I was the one who broke the silence, and for that, I was labeled the black sheep. But in my home now, I've broken that cycle. We live in truth, even when it's messy. We don't pretend. We don't perform. We feel, we speak, we heal. That's our rhythm. That's our peace. Oh, what a beautiful message, Carrie. Thank you so much for sending that. And it's good to know the foundations you've laid for your own family. And it is important, Kateko, that people feel, right? Many of us have never even seen our parents cry. And that's not because they don't cry. That's because for some reason they didn't want us to see them cry. Because that's too vulnerable. Like, it's almost, some would say, yeah, I don't want you to see me weak. But actually, when I see you cry, I know that it's okay to actually cry. I know that it's part of life. It's the different emotions that people feel, and I'm able to, when a moment arises where I'm in pain, where I'm hurt, I know that I don't have to suppress my emotions and my tears. I can just let it out.
Most definitely, and it's good modeling, and I like what the previous, the previous person that messaged to say, this is our rhythm, this is what I created for my own family, obviously within boundaries in terms of how people relate in a respectful way, as long as they know that that is their own truth. And being vulnerable is not, it has nothing to do with weakness. Actually, we always say being vulnerable is it's a sign of strength, because you are able to show that I too have a need. I need a pause. I need a break. I'm a human being. I feel, and I can even heal from whatever I'm feeling and going through.
Yeah. And then let me wrap up with another message here. It says, Clement, when I was 16, my stepmother tried to shoot me, but missed narrowly. My 4 siblings and father were standing behind her. Long story short, my father divorced her. However, no one wanted to face the reality of what I was going through and swept it under the rug. 5 years later, I was having these breakdowns. I went to see someone, which helped a lot, but what helped the most is my family started talking to me about it and listening. And this changed everything. Oh, that's great. And then another one says, my parents never allowed the expression of negative feelings and emotions. It was deemed to be disrespectful and ungrateful. Today, my mother wants us to have a healthy, open relationship, but I can't talk to her about anything. When we're together, we just sit in silence. When we do talk, it's just about superficial things. Our relationship is not authentic. I therefore don't communicate with her unless I have to. There are many people in Nkateko who listen to that message and they're thinking, I'm in those shoes too, where you grew up in a home where you were not allowed to express your emotions, but your parents have evolved now, and they are also learning that it's important maybe to have conversations and to be vulnerable. And now when they're trying to change their position, it's a little too late, because you are too hardened by the reality that there's never been a moment where we could talk. So how do I reverse all of that and I become vulnerable with you now? What's your advice to people facing this situation?
Yeah. And, I will say lost time is lost, but it's not all lost in terms of what we can build from here on. We cannot reverse what was done. We can only look forward to say, okay, our relationship is different from that of child to mother. Yes, we are not peers and we can never be peers. We are not friends. We can never be friends, but we can cultivate a healthier adult relationship. So I will give an example. So when our parents said they don't have money, as children, we protested, thinking, how can you be working and say you don't have money? That's how you can start that conversation and that relationship, to say, ooh, I used to look at you and thinking, what do you do with your money? Now that I'm older, I see it. So you come with common, on a common ground, and then start to speak about parenting. Oh, it must have been difficult to raise me as a single parent, and I must have been giving you a hard time, even though you were trying to be loving, and so you use words that are connecting the past, but then bringing them to the adult relationship with things that you are starting to experience, where you are saying, now I am empathetic to you not connecting with us, for you not being emotionally available. I'm not blaming you for not being emotionally available. I'm not blaming you to not have the language to identify what you are feeling, or being able to empathize with me. I can see how it must have been hard, because I am experiencing the same thing, even though I'm trying with my own children. Start with where you are, having an adult conversation, empathizing, relating, bringing some relatability that will connect you.
Nkateko Ndala Magoro, counseling psychologist, thanks for making time for us.
Hollywood Bets invites you to take the lead. The sizzling summer competition is giving you a chance to bask in horse racing glory and blaze into red-hot rewards. Bet 50 Rand or more on horse racing online or at your nearest branch and you could win a share of 1 million Rand in prizes. Enjoy a star-studded lineup of equestrian events this summer and settle up for a season of success. Bet now. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counselling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
Your ABSA Visa card is rubbing its hands and getting ready for this Black Friday. That blender that gets your smoothie right can be yours. Your favorite sneakers, yours. That 65-inch TV, say less. You could get up to 100% real cash back depending on your rewards tier on Black Friday and Cyber Monday when you pay with your digital wallet or shop online using your ABSA Visa card at selected rewards partners. Valid 24 November to 1 December. Your story matters. ABSA. T's and C's apply. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Coming up
on the Midday Report
with Mandy Wiener.
How are you doing, Mandy Wiener?
Good, thanks, Clement.
We missed you at G20 this weekend.
I'm sorry, I had a bit of FOMO, I won't lie. But the sense I'm getting from everybody is that there was a lot of patriotism, people feeling very proud. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we've turned, 31 as a country. And it's like when you're like, you become an adult and you're like bossing the room.
Things are more contextual.
Yes,
What's happening on the Midday Report?
So the DA has sent the John Steenhuisen and Dion George dispute to its Federal Legal Commission. We'll speak to the DA about that. It is the day after the weekend before, so we'll look at the legacy of the G20 and what it means for South Africa, a victory for multilateralism. The NPA head, Shamila Batoy, is taking some heat at the Andrew Chauke inquiry from the commissioners there. And then the Proteas are doing really well at the moment in India. So we'll wrap up the weekend sport.
All right, that's what's coming up on the Midday Report with Mandy Wiener. Thanks for listening to the Monday edition of the Clement Manyathela Show. We'll be back with you tomorrow between 9 and 12. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Bye-bye.
This is EWN.
Good afternoon, I'm Vali Dlamini. Search operations for 2 people washed away by floods in KwaZulu-Natal are continuing after one body was recovered. It comes as an alert for severe weather remains in place for the province. KwaZulu-Natal has been hit by heavy rain with severe thunderstorms causing localized flooding. Nhlanhla Mabaso reports.
The body of the female who drowned was found in the Njasuti region